Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Whisper Zone. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. I never thought I'd be afraid of hearing my dead wife's voice again. But that was before the howls started in Redwood National Park, before the creatures came, before I lost everything for the second time. My name is Will Patterson, and I've been a ranger here for 12 years. Most folks call me Will, though some of the older rangers still call me Sarge from my Army Ranger days in Vietnam. The war taught me a lot about survival, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened in these woods during the autumn of 1965. That morning started like any other. A thick blanket of fog had rolled in between the ancient redwoods, making the massive trees look like giants playing hide-and-seek in the mist. The kind of fog that turns familiar trails into strangers' paths. I adjusted the collar of my ranger jacket against the morning chill and checked my watch. 6:30 a.m. Come on. Max, I called to my German shepherd, who usually bounded ahead of me on our morning patrols. But today was different. Max stayed close to my leg, his ears twitching at every little sound. I reached down and felt his muscles tensed under his fur. Something wasn't right. I touched the silver locket I always carried in my pocket. Sarah's locket. My wife had worn it every day until cancer took her 2 years ago. Now it was my good luck charm, my way of keeping her close. The forest was wrong this morning. Anyone who spends enough time in the woods knows its language. The morning chorus of birds, the rustling of small animals, the whisper of wind through the trees. But today, there was only silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Max suddenly stopped, his nose working overtime. I pulled out my flashlight even though dawn was breaking. The fog made everything darker than it should be. The beam caught something strange in the soft dirt of the trail, tracks. But not like anything I'd seen in my years of ranger work. They looked almost like wolf prints, but massive, bigger than my spread hand. And there was something else wrong about them. I'd been tracking animals since I was a kid, and these prints, they changed. Some were deep like the creature was heavy, others light like it barely touched the ground, and they didn't move in a straight line like a normal animal. They zigzagged like whatever made them could move faster than anything natural. "What do you think, boy?" I whispered to Max. He answered with a low growl I'd never heard from him before. Not his usual alert bark for bears or mountain lions. This was different. Afraid. I straightened up, my hand automatically checking my rifle strap. The fog seemed to press in closer, and the massive redwoods loomed overhead like silent watchers. In all my years in these woods, I'd never felt like an intruder until that moment. Never felt like prey. A twig snapped somewhere in the white wall of fog. Max's growl got deeper, and then we heard it. A sound that had no place in these woods, or anywhere else in the natural world. A perfect copy of a human voice calling out, "Help, somebody please help." It was a child's voice, but there was something wrong about it. Something that made my combat-trained instincts scream danger, because I knew there weren't any hiking groups with children registered in the park this week. And that voice, it echoed in a way that broke. The laws of nature. Max pressed against my leg, trembling, and I knew right then that our morning patrol was about to turn into something else entirely. Something that would make me question everything I thought I knew about the wilderness I called home. I just didn't know yet that it would also make me question what it means to be human. I clicked my radio on. "Base, this is Patterson. You got any reports of missing hikers in the north section?" Static crackled back at me. Then Betty's voice came through, tired from the night shift. "Will, this is the third call about missing people in 2 weeks. Johnson family hasn't checked in since yesterday evening. They were supposed to be at Campsite 14. My stomach tightened. Campsite 14 was just half a mile ahead. "I'll check it out," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Keep the channel open." Max and I moved forward, but he wasn't happy about it. Every few steps, he'd stop and look back at me like he was begging to go home. I'd never seen him act this way, not even during thunderstorms. The weird child's voice we'd heard didn't come again, but something else did. Howls. Not normal wolf howls, though. These started like wolf cries, but changed halfway through, turning into something that sounded almost like words, like someone trying to speak while gargling water. "It's okay, boy," I whispered to Max, but we both knew I was lying. The fog started clearing a bit as we got closer to campsite 14. I wish it hadn't. What I saw made my blood run cold. The campsite looked like it had been hit by a tornado, but only in specific spots. The tent was shredded, but not randomly. The tiers were in straight lines, like something with claws had deliberately cut it open. The family's cooler was crushed, but their camping stove right next to it hadn't been touched. It was like whatever did this was smart enough to pick its targets. But the worst part was the blood. Not a lot of it, just drops here and there. But they made a pattern I'd never seen before. They led off in 5 different directions, like something had deliberately tried to confuse anyone tracking them. I keyed my radio again. "Base, we've got a situation at campsite 14. Send backup and call the sheriff. And Betty, tell them to bring dogs." More static answered me. Then I heard something that made no sense. Through the radio came a man's voice I recognized. Tim. Robert's one of our senior rangers. But Tim had retired 3 years ago and moved to Florida. "We'll help. They're fast. Too fast. By the old fire tower." The voice cut off. My hands were shaking as I tried the radio again, but now it was dead. Just silence. Max's ears suddenly perked up. He was staring into the trees, and I followed his gaze. Through the thinning fog, about 50 yards away, I saw something that couldn't be real. It looked like a wolf, but it was standing upright. Not like a bear stands sometimes, but perfectly straight, like a person. It was huge. Its head would have reached my ceiling at home. But what really got me were its eyes. They weren't animal eyes. They looked intelligent, like it was thinking, planning. The creature tilted its head, studying us. Then it did something that made my skin crawl. It smiled. Not like a dog showing its teeth, but a human smile. Wrong and horrible on that wolf-like face. Then it was gone. Not like it ran away, it was just gone, faster than anything should be able to move. 1 second there, the next second empty forest. I heard branches cracking in the distance from multiple directions. The sounds were moving around us in a circle. Max pressed against my legs, whimpering. Something was hunting us, and it wasn't alone. I grabbed my rifle and started walking backward, keeping my eyes on the trees around us. "Base, if you can hear me, we're coming in. Something's very wrong out here." The radio crackled to life one more time. This time I heard Sarah's voice, my dead wife's voice, coming through the static. "Will, honey, why did you leave me? Out here in the dark?" That's when I knew we were in real trouble. I ran, I'm not ashamed to admit it. 20 years of ranger work, combat experience in Vietnam, and I ran like a scared kid. Max kept pace beside me as we headed back toward the ranger station. We almost made it. The body was right in the middle of the trail. I would have tripped over it if Max hadn't stopped suddenly, forcing me to halt. It was one of the missing hikers, or what was left of him. But something was wrong about how he was placed. The body wasn't just dumped there. It was arranged, arms and legs set in specific positions, like a kid setting up a doll. I'd seen enough death in Vietnam not to get sick. But this was different. This was a message. These things, whatever they weren't just killing for food. They were smart, they were showing off. That's when I heard something new, a sort of whining sound, like a puppy. But it was coming from something much bigger than a puppy. Through the trees, about 20 feet away, stood what looked like a younger version of the creature we'd seen earlier. It was smaller, maybe my height instead of ceiling tall, and its fur was softer looking. It cocked its head at me, just like Max does when he's confused. For a crazy moment I felt sorry for it. It looked lost. Then Max growled, low and warning. The young creature's eyes changed. The almost human curiosity disappeared, replaced by something ancient and hungry. It took a step forward. "Back off!" I shouted, raising my rifle. The creature stopped. Then it spoke. Not in a mimicked human voice, but in its own, a horrible mix of growl and words. Not time yet. It turned and vanished into the trees, moving so fast it was just a blur. I knew I needed help. Real help, not just the local sheriff. Back at the ranger station, I dug through our old files while Betty made calls. It took 2 hours, but I found what I was looking for. A logbook from 1934, written by Ranger Michael Collins. The pages were yellow and crumbling, but I could read his words clear enough. The wolves walk like men, they speak with stolen voices. 3 tourists missing. Robert says I'm crazy, but I know what I saw. They're hunting us. The rest of the pages were torn out. By afternoon, I had a search party together. Me, 4 other rangers, and 2 local hunters who knew these woods better than anyone. We also had 5 dogs, including Max. I didn't tell them everything I'd seen. Who would believe me? I just said we were looking for missing hikers and dangerous wolves. The fog came back as we headed out, thicker than before. We split into pairs to cover more ground, keeping in radio contact. That was our first mistake. The screaming started. 20 minutes later, through the fog, I heard gunshots, then John Carter yelling, "They're everywhere, they're too fast." His voice cut off. More gunshots from a different direction. Then howls. So many howls all around us, some sounding like wolves, others like perfect copies of human screams. "Group up," I yelled into my radio. "Everyone get to the fire tower." 3 voices responded, then 2, then none. The dogs went crazy, barking and howling, then yelping in pain and fear, all except Max, who stayed silent beside me, trembling but ready. We ran through the fog toward the old fire tower. I could hear heavy footsteps pacing us in the trees, moving impossibly fast. Something dark would flash by in the fog, then disappear. The creatures were herding us, I realized, like sheep. 2 more rangers made it to the tower with me, Mike and Dave. The others, we could hear what was happening to them, but we couldn't see through the fog. The creatures made sure of that. They made us listen. "They're playing with us," Mike whispered, his hands shaking on his rifle. He was right, these things could have killed us all in seconds if they wanted to. This was fun for them. A game. Thunder rolled overhead as dark clouds moved in. A storm was coming, and we were trapped in an old wooden tower, surrounded by monsters that could mimic our friends' dying screams. I touched Sarah's locket in my pocket and tried to think. We needed a plan, and fast. These things were smart, strong, and fast, but they had to have a weakness. I just hoped we'd live long enough to figure out what it was. The old fire tower creaked in the wind as the storm rolled in. Lightning flashed, and in those bright seconds we could see them through the windows. Dark shapes moving around the tower, some on 4 legs, others standing straight up like people. Always moving, never still. "We're not gonna make it, are we?" Dave whispered. His face was pale in the beam of my flashlight. "We're not dead yet," I said, checking my rifle again. 6 bullets left. Mike had 4 in his gun, Dave had 3. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Thunder boomed, and then the voices started. "Help us!" That was John Carter's voice from somewhere in the dark. "Please, Will. They're tearing me apart." "Don't listen," I told the others. "Carter's already dead. They're just..." Using his voice, Max growled at the windows, moving back and forth between them. Smart dog, he was watching all sides. But I could see he was getting tired. The wind got stronger and rain started hammering the tower's tin roof. The sound was so loud we almost missed the first scratch of claws on wood. They were climbing up. "Block the stairs," I yelled. We dragged the old desk and filing cabinet to the trap door that led to the stairs. Not 2 seconds after we got them in place, something huge slammed into the door from below. The desk jumped but held. Then came a voice that made my heart stop. Sarah's voice, soft and sweet like she used to sound on Sunday mornings. "Will, baby, why did you let me die alone? Why didn't you save me?" "Shut up," I screamed, even though I knew it wouldn't help. "You're not her," lightning flashed again. A face appeared at the window, like a wolf's face, but wrong. Too big, too human in the eyes. It smiled at me with teeth as long as my fingers. Mike panicked. He fired through the window, shattering the glass. Cold rain and wind rushed in. The creature was gone, but now we had a broken window. The creature's howls got louder, excited. They knew we were scared. "The flare gun," Dave suddenly said. "There's gotta be a flare gun up here." He was right. Every fire tower kept emergency. Flares. I started searching the remaining cabinets while Mike and Dave watched the windows. Max stayed by the trap door, hackles raised. I found the flare gun in a rusty metal box, along with 3 flares. As I loaded the first one, I remembered something. From Vietnam, how the enemy feared fire more than bullets. That's when I noticed something else. Every time lightning flashed, the creatures pulled back from the tower. They didn't like bright light. They didn't like fire. "We need to," I started to say, but then everything happened at once. The trap door burst open, throwing the desk aside. A massive clawed hand reached through. Max didn't hesitate. He leaped at it, biting deep. The creature howled, but not in pain, in victory. "Max, no!" I screamed, but it was too late. The hand yanked back, pulling my brave dog down into the darkness below. I heard fighting, yelping, then silence. "You son of a..." I aimed the flare gun at the trap door just as another creature tried to climb through. The flare hit it right in the chest. It burst into flames, screaming in a voice that wasn't human or animal. The burning creature fell back down the stairs, and suddenly all the howls changed. They weren't excited anymore. They were afraid. "The tower!" I shouted. To Mike and Dave. "We need to burn the tower." They stared at me like I was crazy, but I knew it was our only chance. "The whole forest is wet from the rain," I explained quickly. "But this old wood is dry. We burn it, make a big enough light show, and maybe they'll run." "Maybe?" Dave asked. Another creature started climbing up the outside wall. Mike shot it, but it kept coming. "You got a better idea?" I asked, pulling out my lighter. They didn't. We worked fast, using everything we could find. Old papers, broken furniture, our own jackets. The creatures kept trying to get in, but now we had a plan, a reason to fight. Every time one showed its face, it met bullets or a flare. As the fire spread up the tower's walls, the howls changed again. They were moving back. The light and heat were driving them away. "Down the stairs!" I yelled. "Now, while we have a chance!" We ran, choking on smoke, down the burning steps. Behind us, the old tower was becoming a torch in the rain. Around us in the darkness, I could hear the creatures retreating, their howls fading into the forest. But as we ran, I couldn't stop thinking about Max, my friend, my partner. He'd died saving us, died a hero, and somewhere in the dark, something was still calling out with Sarah's voice getting fainter and fainter. "Will, please don't leave me. Will..." We ran until we couldn't run anymore. The burning tower, a bright star behind us in the rain. We made it back to the ranger station as the sun was coming up. The rain had stopped, but steam was still rising from our clothes after our run through the wet forest. Behind us, smoke from the burning tower drifted up into the morning sky. Betty was on the phone when we stumbled in. Her eyes went wide when she saw us, dirty, burned, bleeding. Only 3 of us, when 7 had gone out. "Call it in," I told her, my voice hoarse from smoke. "Search and rescue, sheriff, everyone." The next few days were a blur of questions and searchers combing the woods. They found pieces of the tower, scattered and burned. They found tracks that made no sense, that changed shape or disappeared in the middle of a trail. They found torn pieces of ranger uniforms, but they never found the bodies. Not John, not the others, not Max. Mike, Dave, and I tried to tell them what happened, but as the words came out, I could hear how crazy it all sounded. Wolf creatures that could talk, monsters that copied human voices. Even I was starting to doubt what I'd seen. The official report called it a tragic accident, said we got lost in the fog, panicked, started shooting at shadows, said the fire was from a lightning strike. Simple explanations for simple people who'd never heard a creature speak with their dead wife's voice. They shut down that section of the park for a while, put up warning signs about dangerous wildlife, told everyone to stay on marked trails and camp only in designated areas. I tried to quit after that. Even typed up my resignation letter. But something kept me here. Maybe it was guilt over the ones we lost. Maybe it was because I knew someone needed to be ready if those things ever came back. A month later, I was doing my morning patrol again. Different route now. I stay away from that part of the forest. The autumn leaves were falling, making the ground look like it was covered in gold and fire. I was about to turn back when I saw something that made me freeze. There, in the soft dirt of the trail, was a single footprint, big as my spread hand, deep at the heel, light at the toes like whatever made it was about to leap into the air. As I stared at it, trying to decide if I was really seeing what I thought I was seeing, a sound drifted through the trees. Not Sarah's voice this time. Not any human voice. It was Max's bark. Just one bark, happy and excited like he used to sound when he wanted to play. Could have been an echo. Could have been my mind playing tricks. But I don't think it was. I stood there for a long time, my hand wrapped around Sarah's locket in my pocket. Part of me wanted to follow that sound, to run into the trees calling Max's name. But the smarter part remembered the tower, remembered the flames and the howls and the teeth. Finally, I turned around and walked back to the ranger station. But I keep my rifle loaded now, keep my radio close. And every time I hear a wolf howl in the distance, I listen close to make sure it sounds natural. Because I know they're still out there, hiding in the deep woods where the fog grows thick, waiting. Learning our voices, getting smarter. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon is full, I think I hear Sarah calling me from the forest. On those nights, I lock my doors, close my curtains, and try to remember that the real Sarah would never want me to walk into the dark, but it's getting harder to remember that. And the voices are getting better at sounding real. Last week I heard Max and Sarah together, their sounds mixing in the night air. Max's playful bark, Sarah's gentle laugh, the sounds of the two things I loved most in this world, calling me to join them. One of these nights, I might answer. The Mist Walker, I've seen things in these mountains that no one would believe. Things that make me question everything I thought I knew about our world. But I have to tell this story now, before the fog comes back to claim my memories like it's done so many times before. My name is Dan O'Connor. I've been a park ranger here in Shenandoah National Park for 20 years, and until last spring, I thought I knew every tree, trail, and creature that called these mountains home. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. It started on what should have been a normal morning patrol along Skyline Drive. The sun was just coming up, painting the mountains in shades of gold and pink, but something wasn't right. The fog that day, it moved wrong. I've seen mountain fog hundreds of times, the way it rolls through valleys or sits like a blanket over the trees. But this was different. This fog had purpose. It twisted and curled like fingers reaching out, then pulled back when I got too close, almost like it was alive. I pulled my truck over to the side of the road and took another sip from my flask, something I'd been doing too often since Tommy disappeared last year. My son had been everything to me, and his disappearance broke something inside me that the whiskey couldn't fix. But that morning, I needed to be clear-headed. The fog was trying to tell me something. As I walked along the roadside, my boots crunching, on gravel, I spotted something half buried in the dirt. Kneeling down, I brushed away the soil to find what looked like an ancient piece of pottery, decorated with symbols I'd never seen before. In my 2 decades working these trails, I'd never found anything like it. Next to it, carved into a flat rock face, were strange markings, petroglyphs we call them. But these weren't like the usual native rock art I'd studied over the years. These showed a tall, human-like figure dissolving into mist, with smaller human figures bowing before it. The silence hit me next. Anyone who knows these mountains knows they're never truly quiet. There's always birds singing, squirrels chattering, leaves rustling. But at that moment, everything went dead silent. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring and your skin prickle. Even the morning breeze died away, leaving the fog hanging perfectly still around me. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. Dan, you copy? We've got some hikers up at Bear Rock reporting strange activity. Said they can't remember how they got there, Been missing hours of time. Can you check it out? I grabbed my radio, eyes still fixed on those ancient drawings. Copy. That. I'm on my way. But as I stood up, something caught my eye in the fog. A shadow, massive and human-like, but too tall, too fluid in its movements. When I blinked, it was gone. I should have known right then that everything was about to change. The fog had secrets, and whether I was ready or not, it was about to share them with me. When I reached Bear Rock, I found 3 hikers sitting on a log, looking dazed. They were experienced outdoors people, not the type to get lost easily. The woman, Sarah, kept checking her watch and shaking her head. "Something's not right, Ranger O'Connor," she said, her voice shaky. "We started our hike at 7 a.m. It was just a 2-hour loop trail we've done dozens of times. But now it's almost 2 p.m. We're missing 5 hours and none of us can remember what happened." I pulled out my notebook, trying to ignore how my hands trembled slightly. I needed a drink, but I forced myself to focus. "Tell me everything you remember." The youngest hiker, Mike, spoke up. "The fog came in really fast. We thought about turning back, but we knew the trail so well." He paused, rubbing his temples. Then it got really quiet. No birds, no nothing. Next thing we knew, we were here, and half the day was gone. As they talked, I noticed something odd about their boots. They were covered in a strange dark soil, the kind you'd find much deeper in the park, near the old valleys where the local tribes used to hold their ceremonies. But that was miles from here. I was about to mention this when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Behind the hikers, pressed into a patch of mud, was a footprint. But not just any footprint. This one was huge, easily twice the size of my boot and deep like whatever made it weighed hundreds of pounds. But the strangest part? The edges of the print were fuzzy, like it was dissolving away right before my eyes. I quickly took some photos with my phone, but by the time I looked back, the print was gone. Just gone. In its place was a patch of weird plants I'd never seen before. Dark green with purple spots, growing right where the footprint had been. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my cabin, staring at the photos on my phone while nursing my usual bottle of whiskey. The footprint reminded me of old stories I'd read about the local tribes' legends, tales of a guardian spirit that protected sacred places. I'd always thought they were just stories. My radio buzzed again. It was Jerry from the construction crew working on the new visitor center project. "Dan, you need to get down here. We found something while digging the foundation. Something old." I grabbed my jacket and flashlight. The construction site was only a few miles away, and something in Jerry's voice told me this couldn't wait until morning. As I drove through the dark mountains, the fog started rolling in again. But this time, I swear it was following my truck. What I found at the construction site would change everything. They'd uncovered what looked like an ancient burial ground, stone markers with the same strange symbols I'd seen that morning. But it was what happened next that still gives me nightmares. I was taking pictures of the site when my flashlight caught something moving in the tree line. The beam of light swept across a figure, tall, impossibly tall. But before I could get a good look, it melted away into the mist like ice in hot water. The fog swirled and thickened, and that's when we heard the scream. The scream came from behind the excavator. By the time I got there, Bill, one of the night crew workers, was lying motionless on the ground. The medical team later said it was a heart attack, but I saw the look of pure terror frozen on his face. He'd seen something in that fog, something that scared him to death. The next morning, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my coffee cup. I'd given up the flask. What I'd seen was scary enough without alcohol clouding my mind. That's when Maria Thompson, my partner of 5 years, walked into my office. "Dan, you look terrible," she said, dropping a thick folder on my desk. "But you need to see this. I've been researching those symbols we found." I opened the folder to find photographs of similar markings from all over the Appalachian Mountains. But before we could discuss it further, my phone rang. It was John Running Bear, one of the tribal elders I'd known for years. "Dan," his voice was serious, "we need to talk. Meet me at Cedar Creek in an hour." When I got there, John was sitting. on a fallen log, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The fog was thin here, just wisps between the trees, but it made me nervous now. My grandfather told me stories, John began, his eyes on the creek, about a guardian of these mountains, the Mistwalker we called it, a being as old as the hills themselves protecting our sacred places. He turned to look at me. But you've seen it already, haven't you, Dan? I told him everything, the footprints, the missing time, Bill's death. John listened quietly, nodding. The construction, he said finally. It's disturbing an ancient burial ground, one of our most sacred sites. The walker is angry. John, I hesitated. These things happening. They remind me of when Tommy disappeared last year. The fog that day was just like this. John's face grew sad. The walker protects what's sacred, Dan. Sometimes it takes people to do that. My heart felt like it stopped. Are you saying... But before I could finish, Maria's voice crackled over my radio. Dan, I'm at the construction site. You need to see this. I got pictures of something in the fog. It's incredible. Oh God, it's coming toward me. Dan, help. The radio went dead. I ran to my truck, John calling after me, but I couldn't wait. The drive to the construction site took forever, even with my emergency lights on. When I got there, the fog was the thickest I'd ever seen it. I found Maria's camera, smashed on the ground, but no sign of her, except there was one photo still visible on the cracked screen. My hands trembled as I looked at it. There, in the fog, was a shape. Huge, at least 9 feet tall, with long arms and legs. But its edges weren't solid. They swirled and shifted like smoke. And its eyes were looking right at the camera. I fell to my knees, memories of Tommy's disappearance flooding back. The fog that day had been just like this. I'd blamed myself, drowned my guilt in whiskey, but now I knew the truth. The Mistwalker hadn't just taken Maria, it had my son too, and I was done being afraid. It was time to face this thing, whatever it was. But first, I needed to understand what we were really dealing with at that construction site. What was so important that this ancient guardian would kill to protect it? Looking at Maria's camera, again, I noticed something in the background of that last photo. A stone marker partially uncovered by the construction. The symbols on it were glowing. I spent that night in my office, looking through every old map of the park I could find. The construction site wasn't just on any burial ground. It was on top of what the tribes called the meeting place between worlds. My hands were steady now. Fear had been replaced by something else. Determination. The next morning I drove to the construction site. The workers had all quit after Maria disappeared, leaving their equipment standing like silent giants in the fog. I parked my truck and grabbed my backpack, which held only my flashlight, some water, and an old tribal necklace John had given me years ago. The fog was different today. It moved with purpose, swirling around my feet like a curious cat. The air felt heavy, like right before a thunderstorm. As I walked deeper into the site, the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. That's when I saw it, the stone marker from Maria's photo. The symbols were still glowing faintly, giving off a soft blue light. I knelt down to look closer, and my heart nearly stopped. These weren't just random markings. They were a message. The guardian walks between mist and mind. What's taken is not lost, but kept safe behind, where time moves slow and memories sleep, until the sacred ground its peace can keep. My hands shook as I touched the glowing symbols. They were warm, like sunlight on stone. Tommy, I whispered into the fog. Maria? The mist began to spin, faster and faster, forming a wall around me. And then I saw it. The Mistwalker. It was even bigger up close, its body shifting between solid and vapor like smoke in the wind. But its eyes, they were the deepest brown I'd ever seen. Human eyes, sad eyes. I know why you're here, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. This place, it's sacred. The construction would destroy it. I took a deep breath. But you took my son and my friend. The creature moved closer, its form becoming more solid. In the swirling mist behind it, I caught glimpses of something else. A place? There were trees, but they looked strange, frozen in time. And between them I saw movement. People walking. One looked like... Tommy? My voice cracked. The Mistwalker raised its huge hand, and suddenly I could see clearly into this other place. Tommy was there, and Maria too. They were walking among the ancient trees, but they didn't look scared. They looked peaceful, protected. The creature's voice wasn't a voice at all. It was more like feelings and images pushed into my mind. It showed me what would happen if the construction continued. The sacred ground destroyed. The barrier between worlds broken. Ancient spirits released. The Mistwalker was keeping more than just the land safe. It was keeping our world safe. I understood then what I had to do. But I also knew I couldn't leave without saying goodbye. Can I? I swallowed hard. Can I talk to him just once? The Mistwalker's form swirled, and suddenly Tommy was standing in front of me, Maria beside him. They looked exactly the same. It's when they disappeared, not a day older. Dad, Tommy said, his voice echoing like it came from far away. It's okay. We're protecting something important here. I understand now. Maria nodded. The construction has to stop, Dan. We've seen what could happen if it doesn't. I wanted to grab them, to pull them back to our world, but I knew I couldn't. They were part of something bigger now. Something necessary. I'll stop it, I promised. I'll protect this place, but I'll miss you, both of you. Tommy smiled. That same smile that had lit up my world for 14 years. We're not gone, Dad. We're just somewhere else, watching, protecting. The fog began to thicken again, and I knew our time was running out. I love you, Tommy. Love you too, Dad. Stay safe. And stay sober. Their forms began to fade, becoming one with the mist again. The Mistwalker's shape loomed over me one last time, those deep brown eyes meeting mine. I felt a gentle touch on my forehead, a blessing maybe, or a promise. Then everything went white. I woke up as the sun was rising, lying on the ground, near the stone marker. For a moment I wondered if it had all been a dream, but there, clutched in my hand, was Tommy's old baseball cap, the one he'd been wearing when he disappeared. The construction company's equipment was covered in a thick layer of moss and vines, like nature itself was reclaiming the land. The next few weeks were busy. I took all my evidence, the ancient artifacts, Maria's last photo, the historical records, to the Park Service. John Running Bear and other tribal elders joined me, sharing their knowledge of the sacred site. The construction project was quickly canceled, and the area was declared a protected cultural heritage site. That was 5 years ago. I haven't touched a drop of alcohol since that night. Instead, I've become the unofficial guardian of this place. The tribal elders made me an honorary member of their council, teaching me the old ways of protecting sacred land. Sometimes early in the morning when the fog rolls in, I sit near the stone marker and talk to Tommy and Maria. I tell them about my day, about the changes in the park, about how much I miss them. I never see them clearly like I did that night, but sometimes I catch glimpses in the mist, a familiar smile, a wave, a flash of Tommy's red jacket. Other hikers and rangers have stories too. They talk about feeling watched in the fog, about losing track of time, about seeing a tall figure that disappears when they look directly at it. I listen to their stories and make sure the sacred ground stays protected. The Mistwalker is still here. I feel it sometimes, especially when the fog gets thick. But it's not scary anymore. We understand each other now. We're both guardians, protecting something precious. Last week, a young ranger found some teens trying to vandalize the stone marker. Before she could reach them, a thick fog rolled in out of nowhere. When it cleared 10 minutes later, the teens were found half a mile away, confused and scared. They swore they saw something in the mist, something big, something ancient. The ranger just smiled and called me. I drove out to the site that evening as the sun was setting. The fog was gentle, almost playful. Standing at the stone marker, I felt that familiar presence. Thanks for the help, I said quietly. Tommy would have hated seeing his spot vandalized. The fog swirled once like a nod, and I swear I heard Tommy's laugh on the wind. People ask me sometimes if I'm sad, living here alone, knowing where Tommy and Maria are but not being able to really reach them. I tell them I'm not alone. I'm right where I need to be, doing what I need to do. The mountains have their guardian, and so do I. And on quiet mornings when the fog rolls down from the peaks like a living thing, I know they're watching. I know they're safe. Sometimes that's all a father needs to know. The construction equipment is still there, slowly being eaten by the forest. Nobody's tried to move it. It stands as a reminder that some places are sacred, some boundaries shouldn't be crossed, and some stories are better left in the mist. But I still keep Tommy's baseball cap on my desk, just in case anyone needs proof that not all stories are just stories, and not all guardians wear uniforms. The fog is rolling in now as I write this. Time to go walk my rounds. After all, someone needs to make sure the signs stay up. Protected. Did we know development? Below that, in smaller letters, beware of fog. I think I see Tommy smiling. Something wasn't right in my forest. I'd been a park ranger at Sequoia National Park for only 3 months, but I knew the signs. The birds had stopped singing 2 days ago. Not just in one area, everywhere. The usual morning chorus of chickadees and nuthatches was replaced by an eerie silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My name is Maria Ramirez, and I've learned to trust these feelings. Some might call it instinct, but my grandmother called it a gift. She taught me the old ways of healing and sensing things others can't see. Those skills served me well as a Marine Scout sniper, and they were screaming at me now. I adjusted my ranger hat and wiped the sweat from my forehead. California was different from my old post in Arizona. Bigger trees, different smells, but drought felt the same everywhere. The massive sequoias around me were stressed, their needles drooping more than usual. We hadn't seen rain in weeks. That morning, I found the first dead deer. It wasn't the death that bothered me, that's natural. It was how I found it. Laid out in a perfect circle of pine needles, its legs pointing to the 4 directions. No predator does that. Next to it, carved fresh into the trunk of an ancient sequoia, was a symbol I'd never seen before. Twisted lines that seemed to move when I looked at them too long. Dispatch, this is Ranger Ramirez. I spoke into my radio. I'm up on Morro Trail. Something strange going on up here. Static answered me. Just static. I reached for the small medicine pouch I always carried, the one my grandmother made me. Inside were the sacred herbs she'd given me for protection. For the first time since coming to Sequoia, I felt like I might need them. A twig snapped behind me. I turned slowly, my hand instinctively moving to my sidearm, a habit from my Marine days. Through the thick forest mist, I saw movement. Something was watching me from between the trees. Something that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human. And somewhere in the distance, a fire started burning. I could smell the smoke, see the orange glow. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. No smoke, no glow, like it had never existed. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a normal patrol. Whatever was happening in my forest, it was just the beginning. And somehow, I knew I was meant to be here, meant to face it. I just hoped my training, both military and spiritual, would be enough for what was coming. The next few days made me question everything I knew about the natural world. It started with the wolves. We usually didn't see them in groups larger than 4 or 5, but that evening I counted 12 moving together. Not just moving, hunting. They surrounded a tourist campsite like they were following military tactics, something I'd never seen wolves do. I had to fire warning shots to scatter them. "You're seeing things, Ramirez," said Jake, my fellow ranger, when I reported it. But something was off about him, too. Jake, who'd worked here for 15 years and knew every trail by heart, got lost 3 times that week. The Jake I knew could navigate these woods blindfolded. "You feeling okay?" I asked him one morning at the ranger station. His eyes looked different, darker somehow. "Never better," he said. but his smile didn't reach his eyes. He kept scratching at his arms like his skin didn't fit right. Then the native families from the nearby reservation started leaving. Not just one or two, all of them. I found Sarah, an elder I'd become friends with, packing up her car. The signs are here, she told me quietly. The ancestors warn us. Evil walks these woods now, Maria. The kind that wears many faces. She pressed a small bundle of sage into my hand. Burn this. Keep it with you. That night, I discovered the petroglyphs, ancient rock art that had stood for centuries, destroyed. Not vandalized with spray paint or normal graffiti. The rocks themselves were shattered, and in their place were those same twisted symbols I'd seen on the tree. My grandmother used to tell me that some people could sense things others couldn't. As a child, I'd always known when something bad was about to happen. Now that same feeling was overwhelming me. Every shadow seemed deeper. Every sound echoed wrong. The forest itself felt like it was holding its breath. I started carrying my grandmother's herbs everywhere. The sage Sarah gave me. My marine combat knife, my service weapon. But something told me regular weapons wouldn't be enough for what was coming. One evening I found fresh claw marks on a tree, 8 feet high. Way too high for a bear. Below them was a half-eaten deer, but the bite marks weren't from any animal. I knew. And the worst part? The deer's eyes were still open and they looked human. I reported everything through proper channels, filed the paperwork, took photos. But deep down, I knew this wasn't something that could be handled with standard park protocols. Whatever was in my forest was getting bolder, stronger, and I had a terrible feeling it was watching me back. That night, for the first time since my tours in the Marines, I slept with the lights on. But even through the closed windows of my cabin, I could hear it. The sound of something moving through the trees, speaking in voices that shouldn't exist. I found its lair on a Tuesday morning. The air got colder as I followed a trail of broken branches and strange footprints. Some looked like wolf tracks, others like bear, and some like human feet, all leading to the same place. My radio crackled with static, then died completely. The cave entrance was hidden behind a fallen sequoia. Even from outside, I could smell something wrong, like rotting leaves and wet fur, mixed with a smell I'd never encountered before. My training told me to wait for backup, but backup wasn't coming. 3 more rangers had started acting strange like Jake, wandering off their paths, talking in whispers when they thought no one was listening. Inside the cave, my flashlight beam showed what I'd been dreading. The walls were covered with those twisted symbols, but here they were, drawn in something dark and red. Scattered around were pieces of clothing, ranger uniforms, hiking boots, backpacks. In the corner, a pile of bones. Some animal, some not. Then I saw it. A shadow moving against shadows. Not one shape, but many. Like watching smoke try to be solid. I backed away slowly, but it had already noticed me. The temperature dropped, so fast my breath turned to frost. And then I heard it speak, not with one voice, but with many. Voices I recognized. Jake's voice, the missing hiker's voices, even a child's laugh. Maria Ramirez, it said, using all those voices at once. We've been waiting for you. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. 20 years of military and ranger training, and I ran like a scared kid, because that's what my instincts screamed at me to do. Back at the ranger station, I found chaos. A pack of deer, gentle creatures that usually ran from humans, had attacked a group of tourists near the giant forest museum. The tourists described the deer's eyes as glowing black. While I was taking their statement, a flock of ravens descended. On another group, moving like they were all controlled by one mind. We need to evacuate the park, I told my supervisor, Chief Rogers. But when he turned to face me, his eyes were wrong. Just like Jake's had been. Everything's fine, Ranger Ramirez, he said in a voice that wasn't quite his. Why don't you take some time off? You seem stressed. That evening I counted 5 separate forest fires that started and stopped on their own. The wind carried screams that didn't sound human. and my phone was flooded with photos from tourists. Shadows where shadows shouldn't be, animals moving in impossible ways, and dark figures standing between trees that disappeared when looked at directly. I tried calling Sarah, the elder who'd given me the sage, but her phone was disconnected. In desperation, I called my grandmother in Arizona. "Nieta," she said gravely when I described what was happening. "What you're dealing with is a skinwalker, one of the most powerful I've ever heard of. It's been feeding, growing stronger. Those rangers, the animals, they're all its puppets now." "How do I stop it?" "You don't," she said. "Not alone," he said. "Not, but I can teach you the ritual, the one passed down through generations. You'll only have one chance, and if it fails..." She paused. "Just remember your training, both kinds." I looked out my cabin window at the darkening forest. Through the trees, I could see multiple pairs of eyes watching me, waiting, and I knew tomorrow would be my last chance to save my forest, my people, and maybe my own soul, because the skinwalker wasn't just hiding in the shadows anymore. It was creating them, and it was hungry for more. My grandmother's ritual had to be performed at exactly the right time, during the solar eclipse that was coming tomorrow morning. The darkness must fight the darkness, she had explained over the phone. I spent the night preparing. I laid out the sacred herbs in a circle inside my cabin: sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and tobacco. My grandmother guided me through each step over the phone until my battery died. The last thing she said was, "Trust your heart, Nieta. It knows what to do." As the sun rose, I knew something was different. The forest was too quiet, like everything was holding its breath. I strapped on my utility belt, loaded with both my standard ranger gear and the sacred herbs. My combat knife went into its sheath, blessed with prayers my grandmother had taught me. I headed toward the cave. I knew that's where it would be waiting. Every step felt heavy, like walking through deep water. Dark clouds gathered overhead, too fast to be natural. The eclipse was coming. Halfway there, I heard twigs snapping behind me. I turned to find Jake, Chief Rogers, and 3 other rangers surrounding me in a circle. Their movements were jerky, like puppets on strings. Their eyes were solid black. "Join us, Maria," they said in perfect unison. But the voice wasn't theirs. It was ancient, hungry. "We can show you real power," I clutched my medicine pouch. "This isn't you, Jake," I said, focusing on my friend. "Fight it. All of you, fight it." For a second, I saw the real Jake in his eyes, struggling. But then, darkness took over again. They moved toward me as one. That's when the animals came. Wolves, deer, bears, all moving together. All with those same black eyes. I was surrounded. The sky grew darker as the eclipse began. I broke into a run, ducking under a possessed deer's antlers, rolling past a wolf's snapping jaws just like I'd done in Marine training. The cave was just ahead. Inside was the heart of it all, the skinwalker itself. The eclipse reached totality. Darkness fell over the forest like a heavy blanket. In that darkness, I finally saw its true form. It was like a shadow trying to be every creature at once. Part wolf, part bear, part human, but all wrong. Those twisted symbols on its skin glowed with a sickly light. "Your grandmother's magic is weak," it spoke with 1,000 voices. "We are ancient. We are legion. We are hunger itself." I felt its power trying to enter my mind, showing me visions of everyone I loved suffering. But my grandmother had prepared me for this. I began the ritual, my voice shaking but strong. With sage I cleanse. With cedar I protect. With sweetgrass I heal. With tobacco I offer. The skinwalker screamed, a sound like metal tearing, and launched itself at me. I dove to the side, throwing the blessed herbs in a circle around us both. The possessed rangers and animals tried to break through, but the circle held them back. "You are nothing!" it roared, its form shifting rapidly between shapes. "I am my grandmother's granddaughter," I said firmly. "I am a protector of this land, and you have no power here." I threw my last bundle of herbs, the special mix my grandmother had prepared, directly at its center. There was a flash of light brighter than the sun. The skinwalker's scream shook the cave walls. I felt its darkness trying to pull me in, to take me with it, but I held on to who I was. Marine, ranger, healer, protector. The eclipse began to end. Light returned, and in that moment between darkness and light, I saw my chance. I pulled out the sacred object my grandmother had given me years ago, a small turquoise stone passed down through generations. As the skinwalker tried one last attack, I held up the stone. The thing that had terrorized my forest, that had taken my friends, was pulled toward the stone like water down a drain, shrieking and clawing, but unable to resist. Its darkness condensed, twisted, and finally vanished into the turquoise, which turned ice cold in my hand. Around me, the possessed rangers and animals collapsed like puppets with cut strings. The unnatural darkness lifted. Normal sunlight returned to the forest. It was over. But as I looked at my unconscious friends and the stone thrumming with trapped evil in my hand, I knew this wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning. The official report said it was a rabies outbreak. That's what we told the press, the tourists, and most of the park staff. It was easier for people to believe that than the truth. We lost 3 rangers that day. Not to the skinwalker, but to what happened after. They just disappeared into the forest, their minds too broken from being possessed. Search parties found nothing but their badges. Jake was lucky. He recovered, but he requested a transfer to another park. He said he couldn't look at the sequoias the same way anymore. I understood. The tribal elders came back to the reservation a week later. Sarah hugged me tight when she saw me. "You did well," she said, looking at the turquoise stone I now wore around my neck. "But your work isn't done." She was right. The skinwalker might be trapped, but its darkness had left marks on the forest. Places where the shadows were still. Too deep where animals wouldn't go. The elders appointed me as their liaison with the Park Service. Together, we started monthly cleansing rituals at sacred sites throughout the park. Chief Rogers retired early. Before he left, he pulled me aside. "I don't remember much," he said, "but I remember you standing your ground. Whatever really happened, out there you saved lives." He shook my hand. "The park's in good hands with you, Ramirez. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear whispers in the wind that don't sound quite natural. The turquoise stone grows cold against my skin when I walk, past certain trees. But now I know what to look for. My grandmother visits regularly, teaching me more of the old ways. She says knowledge is the best protection. The tourists have returned. The birds are singing again. Most days, Sequoia National Park feels normal, peaceful even. But I keep my medicine pouch close. I watch the shadows. And on quiet nights when the moon is dark, I walk the trails, sage smoke curling around my feet, keeping watch. Because now I know, some trails lead to shadows, and some shadows have teeth. But as long as I'm here, those shadows won't take anyone else. I am Maria Ramirez, park ranger, former Marine, and now guardian of something much older and darker than any of those titles. And this is my forest. The screaming always comes first in my nightmares, then the darkness, then the walls closing in. Even after 15 years as a cave rescue specialist at Mammoth Cave, I still wake up in cold sweats remembering that mining accident that nearly killed me. But today, those old fears would come back to haunt me in ways I never imagined. My name is Tom Mitchell. I'm 41, and until 6 months ago, I had a pretty normal life. If you can call crawling through underground tunnels for a living normal. Then Sarah, my wife, died in a car crash, leaving me to raise our teenage daughter Jenny alone. The caves became my escape after that. The darkness was easier to face than an empty house. "Morning, Tom." Jerry, our tour manager, called out as I walked into the ranger station. "Got a routine inspection for you today. The new section we found last week needs checking before we can take tourists through." I grabbed my gear and flashlight, double-checking. Everything like I always do. Jenny had stayed over at her friend's house last night, which was good. She'd been trying to tag along on my cave visits lately, saying she wanted to learn the family business. But something about this new cave section made me uneasy. The entrance was barely wider than my shoulders. As I squeezed through my helmet, light caught something strange on the wall. Markings I'd never seen before. They weren't the usual graffiti or ancient Native American art we sometimes found. These looked like warnings. My radio crackled. "Tom, you reading me?" Jerry's voice was full of static. "Yeah, but barely. Signal's weird down here." The chamber I entered was huge, but something was off about it. My footsteps echoed differently than they should have, like the cave was singing back to me. I've been in hundreds of caves, but I'd never heard anything like it. That's when I saw the backpack. It was propped against a rock formation, looking almost new. Next to it lay a single glove and a broken flashlight. My heart started beating faster. We hadn't authorized any spelunking groups in this section. I reached for my radio again, but now all I got was static. The air felt different too, heavier somehow. As I turned to head back and report what I'd found, my light caught something, moving in the darkness, just for a second, like a shadow passing over a shadow. I froze. In the caves, movement usually means trouble, loose rocks, unstable ground, or worse. But this was different. It felt deliberate. "Hello?" My voice bounced off the walls, coming back to me in weird ways. "This is Park Ranger Mitchell. Is someone there?" The silence that followed was the loudest I'd ever heard. Then came the sound. Not an echo. Not water dripping. Not any of the 1,000 normal cave sounds I knew by heart. This was like clicking. Like someone tapping stones together, but faster. And it was coming from everywhere at once. I switched off my light. In complete darkness, sometimes you can hear better, notice things you'd miss otherwise. That's when I realized my mistake, because in the pitch black, I finally understood what those wall markings had been trying to tell us. We were never supposed to find this place, and we definitely weren't supposed to wake up what was sleeping here. I backed away slowly, clicking, my light back on. The strange tapping sound faded, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I needed to get out and report this. But just as I turned around, my radio burst to life. "Dad! Dad, are you there?" Jenny's voice crackled through the static. My stomach dropped. "Jenny, what are you doing at the station?" "I came to help. They said a tour group's missing, 6 people. They went in 2 hours ago and never came out. Jerry says they were in your section." No. "Jenny, listen to me. Stay with Jerry. I mean it. I'm coming up right now." But before I could move, I heard screaming. Far off, deep in the cave. Human screaming. I've done cave rescues for 15 years. I know every rule in the book, and the biggest one is, never go deeper alone. But those screams, they were coming from the same direction as those weird marks on the wall. "Dad?" Jenny's voice again. "I'm looking at the cave map. There's another entrance closer to where the signals are coming from. No, don't you dare." But the radio went dead. I tried to think straight. The missing tour group must have found a passage we didn't know about. Maybe they got turned around, panicked. It happens. But that clicking sound, those wall markings. My flashlight beam caught something else on the cave wall. Not just marks. This time, pictures, ancient ones. They showed people. No, not exactly people. The figures were too tall, too thin. And they were hunting. More screams echoed through the tunnels, closer now. Mixed with them was a sound like rocks sliding over rocks. And that clicking, always that clicking. I pulled out our cave mapping device, a fancy computer that shows all the known tunnels. The screen was going crazy, showing passages that couldn't exist, that weren't there yesterday. "Hello?" A weak voice called out. "Please, help!" I swung my light toward the sound. 20 feet away, a man in torn tourist clothes was crawling toward me. Blood ran down his face. "The others," he gasped. It took the others, up the walls, across the ceiling. So fast. "What took them?" I asked, helping him sit up. "What did you see?" He started to answer, but his eyes suddenly went wide, staring at something behind me. That sliding sound again. Closer. Much closer. I turned around, slowly, raising my light. The beam caught something pale and human-like, but wrong in every way. Long limbs, no eyes, and it was crawling on the ceiling, head twisted completely upside down to face us. The clicking sound filled the air, not from rocks, from its mouth, and somewhere in the darkness, I heard my daughter scream. The creature moved so fast I barely had time to think. I grabbed the injured tourist's arm and ran, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the walls. Behind us, that awful clicking sound got louder and louder. "In here!" I pulled us into a narrow crack in the wall. The tourist, he said his name was Mike, was breathing hard, trying not to pass out. The crack was too small for that thing to follow us. At least I hoped it was. "How many?" I whispered. "How many of those things did you see?" Mike's voice shook. "3, maybe 4. They took Linda first, then Bill and Sarah. They just walked up the walls like spiders." He started crying. "What are they?" I didn't answer. 'Cause right then my radio crackled again. "Dad?" Jenny's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm in the cave. Don't be mad. I found the other entrance, but something's wrong. The entrance collapsed behind me. I can't get back out." My heart nearly stopped. "Jenny, listen carefully. Where exactly are you?" I followed the tourist path, but then I found this weird side tunnel. There are marks on the walls. And Dad, I keep hearing noises like someone's clicking their tongue, but it's everywhere. No. Please no. Jenny, hide. Right now. Find the smallest space you can and don't make a sound. I'm coming to get you. The radio went silent. I checked my map device again, but the screen was completely scrambled now. We were on our own. "Mike, can you walk?" He nodded weakly. "Good. Because we have to move. Now." We squeezed out of the crack and started down the tunnel. My mind was racing. The creatures seemed to hunt by sound. That's why they used echolocation, like bats. Maybe if we were quiet enough. A rock clattered somewhere in the darkness. We froze. Click, click, click. The sound came from above us. I slowly raised my light. 2 of them were there, clinging to the ceiling. Their skin was pale as milk, stretched too tight over long bones. Where their eyes should have been, there was just smooth skin. Their mouths were full of small, sharp teeth. They dropped. I shoved Mike forward. "Run!" We sprinted through the tunnels. Left, right, then left again. The creatures followed, their clicking getting closer and closer. My lungs were burning. The air felt thinner. We must have gone deeper into the cave. Then I heard it, Jenny's voice, echoing from somewhere ahead. "Dad, help!" We burst into a huge cavern. Water dripped from the ceiling into deep pools. Weird formations rose from the floor like frozen monsters. And there, on the far side, was Jenny. She was backed against the wall. 3 more creatures were crawling toward her, moving in that horrible spider-like way. "Over here," I yelled, waving my light. The creatures' heads all snapped toward us. That's when the ground started shaking. Rocks crashed down from the ceiling. One of the creatures screamed, a high, terrible sound that made my teeth hurt. More rocks fell. The whole cavern was coming down. "Jenny, run to me." She started running, dodging falling rocks. The creatures scattered, clicking in panic. A boulder smashed into the ground right where they'd been. I reached for Jenny's hand. Our fingers almost touched. Then something grabbed her from behind. One of the creatures had her. She screamed as it started dragging her away. No, but before I could move, the ceiling between us collapsed. A wall of rock cut off my view of Jenny. The last thing I heard was her screaming my name. When the dust cleared, I stared at the rock wall in horror. The cavern had split in 2. Jenny was trapped, on the other side with them. "Jenny!" I screamed, pounding on the rock wall. No answer, just that endless clicking sound now muffled by the rocks. "There has to be another way around," Mike said. He was right. I forced myself to think like a rescue specialist, not a terrified father. The cave mapping device was dead, but I knew these tunnels. Water had to flow between the chambers somehow. Where there's water, there's a path. That's when I heard it, the sound of rushing water behind the walls. There was an underground stream, nearby, but to reach it, I shined my light at a narrow tunnel near the floor. It was barely wider than my chest. My heart started racing just looking at it. Every instinct screamed not to go in there. "I can't go through that," Mike said. "My leg's too hurt." "Stay here," I told him. "Keep your light on. I'll come back for you." I lay down and looked into the tunnel. The walls seemed to squeeze tighter with each breath, just like in the mining accident, just like in my nightmares. Jenny's face flashed in my mind. She needed me. I started crawling. The tunnel got smaller and smaller. I had to turn my head sideways just to fit. Rocks scraped against my back. My chest felt too tight to breathe. Water trickled past my hands. The sound got louder. Then the tunnel opened up into a low cave with a fast-moving stream. And there, in the beam of my flashlight, I saw them. Eggs. Hundreds of them, stuck to the cave walls. They were pale and slightly glowing, each one as big as my head. This wasn't just a nest. It was a nursery. A clicking sound echoed through the chamber. One of the creatures crawled across the ceiling toward me. The glow from the eggs, I could see it better now. Its skin was almost see-through. This wasn't some monster from a story. It was real, something that evolved down here in the darkness, hidden from the world above. The creature dropped to the ground between me and the eggs. It made that horrible clicking sound again, showing its sharp teeth. Then I heard Jenny scream from somewhere beyond the chamber. The creature's head turned toward the sound. That's when I understood. They weren't just hunting us. They were hunting our sounds. I grabbed a rock and threw it as hard as I could against the far wall. The creature's head snapped toward the noise. I threw another rock the other way. And another. The creature went crazy, turning back and forth, clicking faster and faster, confused by all the echoes. I saw the stream disappearing into a tunnel on the other side of the chamber. That had to lead to Jenny. But the creature was still between me and the tunnel. I reached into my pack and pulled out my spare flashlight. With shaking hands, I turned it on and threw it as far as I could. The bright light bounced off the cave walls. The creature screamed that awful high-pitched scream and covered its face with its long fingers. All those years in darkness had made it hate light. I ran past the creature, past the glowing eggs, straight for the stream tunnel. The water was cold and fast. I had to fight to keep my head above water as the current pulled me through the darkness. Then I heard Jenny's voice again, closer now. "Dad, please hurry." The tunnel opened into another chamber. Jenny was there, backed into a corner. Two more. Creatures were crawling toward her, clicking. Without thinking, I pulled out my emergency flare and lit it. Bright red light flooded the chamber. The creatures shrieked and fell from the walls, covering their faces. "Jenny, run!" She ran to me and I grabbed her hand. We splashed through the stream toward another tunnel, but I could hear more clicking behind us. A lot more. The whole nest was waking up, and the water was rising. The water was rising fast now, pouring in from all sides. The creatures clicking grew louder, more frantic. They were everywhere, crawling on the walls, dropping from above, their pale bodies glowing in the red flare light. "Dad, look!" Jenny pointed to a crack in the wall where water was gushing in. Beyond it, I could see the glow of daylight. An underground spring must have connected to the surface. The cave flooding was our only chance. "Take a deep breath," I told Jenny. "When I say now, dive." I held the flare high, keeping the creatures back. The water reached our chests, our necks. The creatures screamed as the flood hit them, washing them off the walls. "Now!" We dove into the freezing water. The current pulled us through the crack, scraping our backs and arms. My lungs were burning. Just when I thought I couldn't hold my breath any longer, we burst out into sunlight. We came up gasping in a small pond outside the cave. Park rangers were already there. Mike had made it out and called for help. Behind us, water gushed from the hillside, carrying bits of rock and cave debris. A few pale shapes washed out too, but they didn't move. The sunlight seemed to paralyze them. The cave system was flooded now. Most of the tunnels collapsed. Whatever creatures survived would retreat deeper underground, back into the darkness where they belonged. Jenny hugged me tight, shaking. "I'm sorry I didn't listen," she whispered. I held her close, thankful we were both alive. "I'm just glad you're safe." They sealed off that section of Mammoth Cave, put up warning signs, installed motion sensors and sonar equipment. But sometimes, late at night when everything is quiet, I still hear it. That soft clicking sound echoing up from the deep places under the earth. And I wonder how many other secrets are hiding in the darkness below. The drumming started 3 nights ago. At first I thought it was just the usual sounds of the Everglades at night. Maybe some woodpeckers or the distant rumble of airboats. But no, this was different. The beats seemed to crawl right into my head, making my hands shake like they used to after my worst days in the Navy SEALs. My name is Peter Anderson, and I've been a park ranger here in the Everglades for the past 5 years. Growing up in these swamps, I thought I knew every sound, every smell, and every creature that called this place home. But lately, something's changed. Tonight, I'm out on my regular patrol, guiding my airboat through the dark waters. The dry season has made the water levels drop lower than usual, but something weird is happening. In some spots, the water is much deeper than it should be, like someone, or something, has been digging underwater caves. My flashlight beam cuts through the darkness, catching the red eyes of alligators floating on the surface. There are 2, many of them in one spot, which isn't normal. In my 15 years as a SEAL, I learned to trust my gut when something feels wrong. And right now, everything feels wrong. I slow the airboat near Turner River, where we found 2 empty tourist boats. Yesterday, their engines were still running, phones and cameras left behind, but no sign of the people. The local police think they just got lost and walked away, but I've seen lost tourists before. They don't just abandon their stuff and vanish. The radio on my belt crackles. "Pete, you there? It's Mike from the station. We've got another missing fisherman report, 3rd one this week." I key the radio to respond, but then I hear it again. That drumming. It's closer now, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sound reminds me of the tribal drums I heard in Southeast Asia, but different, almost hypnotic. My head starts to feel fuzzy, like that time I got too close to a flashbang during training. The alligators around my boat suddenly sink beneath the surface. Even the frogs stop croaking. In 20 years of living and working in these swamps, I've never heard the Everglades go completely silent. That's when I see it, a massive shadow moving under the water, bigger than any gator I've ever encountered. A strange, musky smell fills the air, making my eyes water. Through the mist ahead, I spot something that looks like a cave entrance near the shoreline. Definitely not a natural formation. The drumming gets louder and my hands start shaking. Again, not from fear, but from the memories flooding back. Ambushes in dark waters, the sound of bullets hitting metal, the faces of friends I couldn't save. I grip the airboat's controls tighter, fighting back the flashbacks that have haunted me since. Leaving the service, I should radio this in, head back to the station and return with backup. That would be the smart thing to do. But deep down, I know that by the time we return, whatever made that cave will be long gone, along with any chance of finding those missing people. Taking a deep breath, I turn off the airboat's engine and let it drift toward the cave entrance. The drumming pulses through my chest now, almost like a heartbeat. Whatever's making that sound, whatever's been taking people from my swamp, I'm going to find it. I just hope I'm ready for what's waiting in that cave. I tie my airboat to a nearby cypress tree and pull out my waterproof flashlight. The beam shows footprints in the mud, huge ones, bigger than any human foot I've ever seen. They lead right into the water near the cave. My radio buzzes again. Pete, come in." Mike sounds worried now. I should answer, but something tells me I need to stay quiet. I turn the volume down and clip it back to my belt. The smell gets stronger as I wade through the shallow water toward the cave. It's like a mix of wet dog and something rotting. But there's also this sweet scent that makes my head feel fuzzy. I've tracked animals all my life, but I've never smelled anything like this. That's when I notice the birds. Hundreds of them perched in the trees around me. They're all different kinds, herons, egrets, hawks. But they're just sitting there, watching. Birds don't do that. They definitely don't hang out together like this. My hands start shaking again as a memory hits me. Another dark cave. Years. They go in training where we lost 2 good men to a hidden enemy. I grip my flashlight harder and take deep breaths like my therapist taught me. Focus on now, I whisper to myself. You're in the Everglades. This is your home. The cave entrance is partly underwater. As I get closer, I see something stuck to the walls. Some kind of marking made with mud. It looks old, like the Native American symbols I've seen around the park, but different. These look newer, and they seem to be glowing faintly in the dark. I hear splashing behind me and spin around. Tom, one of our newer rangers, is wading through the water toward me. His eyes look weird, kind of glassy, and he's moving like he's sleepwalking. Tom, I whisper. What are you doing out here? He doesn't answer. Just keeps walking, following the drumbeat that's getting louder and louder. I grab his arm, but he pushes past me like I'm not even there. The drums, he mumbles. They're calling us home. I try to pull him back, but suddenly the water around us explodes with movement. Dozens of alligators surface, forming a circle around us. But they're not acting normal. Their eyes have that same glassy look as Tom's, and they're moving in perfect sync, like they're being controlled. Tom walks right past them and none of the gators even look at him. But when I try to follow, they snap their jaws and move closer. The message is clear. He can pass, but I can't. I back away slowly, keeping my light on the nearest gator. That's when I hear Tom scream from inside the cave. I look up just in time to see him disappear into the darkness. The drumming gets so loud it feels like it's shaking my bones. My training kicks in. I know I need help. Real help, not just the local police. I turn and splash back to my boat as fast as I can, trying to ignore the birds that have all turned their heads to watch me leave. I need to call the station, get my old team from the SEALs involved. Whatever's in that cave isn't just some wild animal. But as I reach for my radio, I realize the truth. Whatever's taken control of the animals, whatever made those marks and took Tom, it let me see all this for a reason. It's not just hunting in my swamp, it's sending me a message. Back at the ranger station, nobody believes me at first. But when Tom doesn't answer his radio and 3 more boats are found empty, they have to listen. We organize a search team. Me, Mike, 2 other rangers, and Sarah, our wildlife expert. The animals are acting weird all over the park, Sarah tells us, spreading out a map. Look at these migration patterns. Everything's moving toward that area you found, Pete. Even species that normally avoid each other. I try to warn them about the drums, but it's too late. As our boats approach the cave, the sound starts again. I see the others getting that same glossy look in their eyes that Tom had. Sarah drops her radio into the water. Mike starts humming along with the beat. Cover your ears, I shout, pulling out the earplugs I brought. But only one ranger, Jack, reacts in time. The others just sit there, swaying to the rhythm. Then everything happens at once. A massive shape bursts out of the water, spraying us with mud and weeds. It's huge, maybe 8 feet tall, and covered in dark fur. The smell hits me like a punch to the gut. That same sweet, dizzy scent from before, but stronger. In the chaos, Mike's boat crashes into a tree. Sarah and the other ranger, Dave, start walking across their boats toward the creature like they're in a trance. Jack tries to grab Sarah, but she pushes him away so hard he falls into the water. Jack, I scream, but he doesn't come up. Something dark moves under the surface where he fell. The creature stands up in the shallow water. Its face. I've seen a lot of things in my life, but this is different. It looks almost human, but wrong. Like someone tried to make a person out of swamp mud and animal parts. And its eyes, they glow like those marks I saw in the cave. It raises its arms, and the drumming gets so loud I can feel it in my teeth. Even through the earplugs. Birds dive bomb our boats. Alligators slam into the sides. Snakes drop from the trees. It's using all the animals like they're its own private army. I start my airboat's engine and ram it straight into the creature. The impact knocks it off balance, and for a second, the drumming stops. Sarah and Dave blink like they're waking up. Mike shakes his head, confused. But then the creature lets out this sound, not a roar, more like a deep, echoing call that makes the whole swamp vibrate. The water around us starts to churn and bubble. "Everyone get back to the station," I yell, "now!" They don't argue. As they turn their boats around, I see something that makes my blood run cold. More glowing marks, just like in the cave, are appearing on the trees. They're spreading out in all directions like the creature is marking new territory. This thing isn't just hunting here anymore. It's trying to take over the whole swamp. I follow the others, but look back one last time. The creature is gone, but I can see shapes moving under the water. Lots of them, all heading toward the station. And in the trees, thousands of eyes reflect my flashlight beam. The animals are following us. We're not the hunters anymore. We're being herded. My hands start shaking on the controls as another memory hits me. Being trapped behind enemy lines, watching the enemy slowly close in. But this time it's different. This time I'm not just fighting for myself or my team. I'm fighting for my home. We barely make it back to the station before all hell breaks loose. The sky turns dark with birds, thousands of them blocking out the stars. Alligators crawl up onto land surrounding the building. Snakes slither across the parking lot like living ropes. Inside, Sarah is on the phone with the Fish and Wildlife Service when the power goes out. The backup generator kicks in, but the phones are dead. Our radios only give us static and that awful drumming sound. "Look at this," Mike says, pulling out an old book. "I called my friend at the Mikosuke tribe. He said his grandmother used to tell stories about something called the marsh caller, a creature that could control animals and make people disappear. Lightning flashes outside and thunder rolls across the swamp. A storm is coming, a big one. Through the window, I see more of those glowing marks appearing on trees, getting closer to the station. That's when I remember something from my SEAL training. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. We can't just sit here and wait, I tell the others. It's hurting us, keeping us trapped. We need to take the fight to it." "But how?" Sarah asks. "We can't even get near it without falling under its control." I pull out my phone and show them a picture I took of the marks in the cave. Mike's friend had sent him something similar, an old tribal drawing showing how their ancestors fought the creature. They used fire and loud noises to confuse it, I explain. "And look at the timing. They attacked during a big storm, when its power over the animals was weaker. Outside, the wind is picking up. The storm's getting closer, and with it, our chance. We grab what we need, flare guns, air horns, and my old SEAL gear that I keep in my locker. Sarah finds some industrial earplugs in the maintenance room, better than what I had before. The cave, I tell them. That's its home. If we can block the entrance, trap it inside. Or drive it out," Mike adds, "away from the swamp." We make our plan fast because we don't have much choice. The animals are getting more aggressive, throwing themselves against the walls and windows. A huge snake smashes through a window, but Sarah manages to catch it with a snare pole. I look at my team. They're scared. I am too. But they're ready. "Remember," I say, "stay close, keep your earplugs in, and watch each other's backs. If anyone starts acting weird, we pull them back." We run for our boats through the rain. The creature's control over the animals isn't as strong now. They're confused by the storm, moving slower, but I can still feel the drumming, like a heartbeat. Under the thunder, my airboat leads the way. The rain stings my face as we speed through the dark water. Lightning shows us glimpses of animals following us on both sides, but they're not attacking. They're running away from something behind us. That's when I see it. A huge shape moving through the trees, keeping pace with our boats. The creature is following us, but this time we want it to. We reach the cave just as the heart of the storm hits. The water's rough, making it hard to keep the boat steady. I grab my flare gun and take aim at the cave entrance. "Now!" I shout. Red light explodes across the water as we fire the flares. The creature bursts from the trees with a roar that shakes the ground. In the flare light, I finally see it clearly, like a giant made of fur and scales and swamp mud. But it's not attacking. It's afraid because we're not the only ones here. Behind us, I hear voices chanting. Mike's friend has brought help. Tribal elders who know the old ways, the real ways to fight this thing. The creature looks at me, and for a second, I see something in its glowing eyes. Not anger or hunger, but recognition. Like it knows what I've been through, knows about the darkness I carry inside. Then everything explodes into chaos. Lightning strikes a tree near the cave, and the world turns white hot for a second. The tribal elders are chanting louder now, their voices somehow cutting through the storm. The creature screams, not in anger but in pain. I know what I have to do. Keep it distracted, I shout to the others. I gun my airboat's engine and speed straight at the creature, just like I did in the Navy when we had to break through enemy lines. The creature swings at my boat, but I'm ready. I duck and swerve, the move feeling natural, like my hands remember what to do even if my mind is scared. The boat hits a wave and flies through the air, water spraying everywhere. That's when I see them, shapes moving under the water. But not animals this time, people. The missing tourists, Tom, Jack, all floating there, asleep but alive. The creature wasn't killing them, it was collecting them, like a kid collecting toys. My boat crashes back into the water near the cave entrance. The tribal elders' chanting gets stronger, and the glowing marks on the trees start to fade. The creature stumbles, looking smaller somehow, less scary. Without its marks and its control over the animals, it's just lost. There, Sarah shouts, pointing to something in the water. Jack surfaces, gasping for air, then Tom, then others. The creature's power is breaking. Mike and Dave help pull people into the boats. But we're not done yet. The creature makes one last try, lunging for my boat. I grab my last flare gun and aim right at its face. This is our home, I tell it. Not yours. The flare hits it right in the chest. The creature howls and falls back into the deep water near the cave. The drumming stops. Just like that, it's quiet except for the rain and thunder. We search for viewers, but the creature is gone. Maybe dead, maybe just wounded and hiding. The tribal elders say it will take a long time for it to get strong again, if it ever does. Everyone we rescued is okay, just confused. They remember the drums, the sweet smell, then nothing until they woke up in the water. The police and news. People come up with their own stories about what happened. A gas leak, mass hysteria, a group of bears driven crazy by the storm. People believe what they want to believe, but the Everglades has changed. We work with the tribe now, learning their old ways of watching for signs. They teach us about the marks, the smells, the sounds that mean danger. Every few nights I take my boat out and check the water levels, looking for new caves. My hands don't shake anymore when I hear weird noises in the swamp. The memories from the Navy don't hit me as hard. Maybe because now I know there are scarier things out there, or maybe because I finally fought a battle that was just about protecting my home. Tom's back at work, though he doesn't go on night patrols anymore. Sarah's studying the tribal stories, recording them so they won't be forgotten. Mike's learning the old language from his friend's grandmother. Me, I'm still here doing my job. The tourists are back, taking pictures and enjoying the swamp. They don't know how close we came to losing this place. But that's okay. That's why we're here, to protect them, to protect the Everglades. Sometimes, on really quiet nights, I think I hear drumming far off in the distance. When that happens, I just start my boat's engine and head that way, because that's what I learned. You don't run from the scary things. You face them. You protect what's yours. And this swamp, it's mine to protect. The marks are fading from the trees now, but we keep watch. We know it might come back someday, or maybe something else will. But next time, we'll be ready. Because that's the thing about the Everglades. It may be a swamp to some people, but to us it's home. And we protect our home, no matter what comes calling in the marsh. The Frozen Watcher. The first time I saw the ice sculpture, I knew something was wrong. Dead wrong. I'd spent 15 years as a ranger at Mount Rainier, and ice doesn't form in the shape of a screaming human face. Not naturally, anyway. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Margaret Henderson. Meg to everyone except my ex-husband. And that morning started like any other patrol during our record-breaking cold snap. The temperature gauge on my truck read -20 degrees, cold enough to freeze spit before it hits the ground. The sun was just a pale disk behind gray clouds, barely lighting up the endless white landscape of the mountain. I pulled my scarf tighter and checked my phone. No signal, as usual. These remote weather stations weren't going to check themselves, and someone had to make sure they were still working in this brutal cold. That someone was me, former Olympic biathlete, current park ranger, full-time mountain hermit. At least that's what my sister calls me. The snow crunched under my boots as I made my way to the first station. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Usually you'd hear ravens calling or small animals rustling in the trees, but there was nothing. Just the sound of my breathing and the wind whistling through bare branches. I noticed the first weird thing when I reached Copper Creek Station. All the small trees around it were bent away from the center, like something had pushed them. Not wind damage. I'd seen plenty of that. This was different. The trees looked like they were trying to escape from something. Then I saw the tracks. Not deer, not bear, not anything I recognized in my 20 years of studying wildlife. They were huge, maybe 2 feet long, and the snow around them had a strange bluish tint. When I knelt down to touch one, the cold bit into my fingers through my thick gloves. It was colder than the surrounding snow, which shouldn't be possible. My radio crackled, making me jump. Through bursts of static, I heard Kevin from base trying to reach me. Meg, static. Missing climbers, static. Return to. The rest was lost as ice suddenly formed on my radio's display, spreading like frost on a window. I'd never seen electronics freeze up like that before. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just another winter storm rolling in. This was something else. Something wrong. As I turned back toward my truck, movement caught my eye. Through the swirling snow, I saw what looked like a human figure, impossibly tall and thin, standing between the trees. But when I blinked, it was gone. Only the bitter cold remained, and a gnawing feeling in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I should have called for backup right then. Should have reported the strange tracks and the frozen radio. But I didn't. Maybe if I had, Marcus would still be alive. Maybe everything would have turned out differently. But when you've spent as much time in these mountains as I have, you start thinking you can handle anything they throw at you. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. The drive back to base should have taken an hour. It took 3. The snow kept getting deeper, and the cold was unlike anything I'd ever felt. My truck's heater was on full blast, but frost still crept up the inside of the windows. That's when the call came in. 3 hikers missing near Paradise Point. In this weather, they wouldn't last long. I turned the truck around, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The guilt from my last failed rescue, the one that still gave me nightmares, started creeping in. But I pushed it down. These people needed help. I found their car first, covered in a layer of ice so thick I had to break it to check inside. Empty. Their tracks led up the trail, then disappeared near the old bridge. But what I found instead made my blood run cold. There was a body, frozen solid, standing straight up in the snow, not lying down like you'd expect from someone who collapsed from the cold. Standing, eyes wide open, mouth frozen in a silent scream. The ice around them was crystal clear, like glass. I'd never seen anything like it in all my years of rescue work. I radioed it in, my voice shaking. "Base, this is Henderson. I found one of the missing hikers. You need to send backup. Something's not right here." While waiting for backup, I noticed more strange things. The trees had those same bent shapes I'd seen earlier, and the air felt wrong. Heavy, like right before a big storm. But the sky was clear now. That's when I met Joe Running Bear, one of the local tribal elders. He'd been watching the mountain for days and came to warn us. "Your people need to leave this place," he said, his breath making clouds in the freezing air. "The frozen one is awake again. It happens every 30 years, when the winter is darkest." I wanted to dismiss it as an old story. But then he described the tracks I'd seen, the impossible ice formations, the standing frozen bodies. He knew things he couldn't have known. 2 more groups of climbers went missing last week, I told him. Did they? They fed it, he said simply. The hunger always comes first, then the cold, then the changing. Back at base, we got the reports from the other missing climber searches. Each scene was the same. Strange ice formations, bodies frozen in unnatural positions, and those same deep tracks in the snow. The temperature kept dropping, breaking all previous records. I sat in my office looking at the photos when my computer screen suddenly frosted over. In the reflection, I swear I saw something tall and thin standing behind me. When I turned around, nothing was there. But the hunger had started. A deep, gnawing hunger I'd never felt before. And somewhere in the distance, I heard ice cracking like breaking bones. The hunger got worse as night fell. I couldn't stop thinking about food, even though I'd just eaten. My stomach felt like an empty pit that nothing could fill. That's when the call came about another missing climber. This time, we got lucky. Or so I thought. We found her alive, huddled in a small cave. Sarah Chen, experienced climber, had all the right gear, but she was shaking badly, her lips blue with cold. "Something's following me," she whispered as I wrapped her in an emergency blanket. "I keep hearing it, scratching on the ice, making things, beautiful, horrible things." I knew what she meant. All around the cave entrance were ice sculptures, perfect copies of human figures twisted in strange poses. They looked so real. Like people frozen in mid-motion. The sight made my stomach turn. "It's so hungry," Sarah said, her eyes wide and glassy. "Can you feel it too?" I could. The hunger was getting harder to ignore. I radioed for helicopter evacuation, but the radio just crackled and went dead, ice forming on its surface. That's when we heard it. A sound like icicles breaking, but deeper. Coming from deeper in the cave system. Sarah grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "It's here," she whispered. I shined my flashlight down the cave tunnel. The beam caught something that made my heart stop. More ice sculptures, dozens of them, leading deeper into the mountain. But these weren't just shapes. They were people I recognized. The missing climbers. Each one perfectly preserved in ice, their faces frozen in terror. "We need to move," I told Sarah. "Now." But as we turned to leave, the cave entrance collapsed in a shower of ice and snow. The temperature plummeted so fast my breath turned to frost in front of my face. We were trapped. Sarah's teeth were chattering, but not just from cold. "I can hear it coming," she said. "The scratching, the hunger." I pulled out my map of the cave system. There had to be another way out. The caves connected to the mountain's old lava tubes. If we could reach them, the geothermal heat might give us a chance. That's when Sarah screamed. I turned just in time to see ice crawling up her legs, spreading faster than anything natural. Her eyes met mine, filled with terror. "Run!" she gasped as the ice reached her chest. "Don't let it make you hungry." Those were her last words before the ice covered her completely. She stood there, another perfect sculpture, her hand reaching out in warning. The scratching sound was getting closer, and with it came a cold so intense it burned. I grabbed my pack and ran deeper into the caves, trying to ignore both the sound of ice forming behind me and the hunger that felt like it was eating me alive from the inside. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw something scratched into the cave wall, old markings, maybe decades old. A warning written in shaky letters. "It wakes every 30 years. The cold comes. The hunger follows. Don't let it touch you. Don't eat. But I was so hungry. I don't know how long I ran through those caves. My flashlight was getting dim, and the cold kept chasing me deeper underground. The hunger was so bad now that my hands were shaking. Everything looked like food. Even the lichen on the cave walls made my mouth water. That's when I heard a human voice calling out. "Meg, is that you?" It was Marcus Rodriguez, my fellow ranger. He was supposed to be off duty today. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, and I'd never been so happy to see anyone in my life. "Marcus," I croaked, my voice rough. "You need to get out of here. There's something—" "I know," he said. "Base lost contact with you hours ago. The whole mountain's frozen over. Even the roads are blocked." He pulled out a protein bar and offered it to me. "Here, you look terrible." I nearly grabbed it, but then remembered the warning on the wall. "Don't eat. Don't eat." My hands were starting to look different, thinner, paler, like ice. "We need to kill it," I said, trying to ignore the hunger. "The creature. I've been studying these cave maps. There's a reason it lives here, in these old volcanic tunnels. It needs the cold, the heat from the mountain's core. That must be its weakness." Marcus nodded slowly. "The geothermal vents, if we could lure it there." A cracking sound echoed through the caves, getting closer. The temperature dropped even further, and our breath came out in thick clouds. "It's following my trail," I said. "Marcus, I think I'm changing like the others. The hunger, it's part of how it makes more of its kind." Marcus grabbed my shoulders. "Listen to me, Meg. You're the strongest person I know. If anyone can fight this, it's you. Now, where are these vents?" I showed him on the map, a series of hot springs deep in the mountain. But getting there meant going through the main cave chamber, where it made its lair. "We need bait," I whispered, hating myself for even thinking it. "Something to draw. Din." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his radio, somehow still working. "Base, this is Rodriguez. I found Henderson. Send backup to the southern cave entrance. I repeat, send—" I grabbed his arm. "What are you doing? The radios don't work down here." He gave me a sad smile. "It's not for base, it's for that thing. It can hear us, right? Feel our heat? Well, now it knows exactly where I am." "No," I said, realizing his plan. "Marcus, no. You said it yourself. We need bait. You're already fighting its influence. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself. Besides," he tried to grin, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "I always wanted to be a hero." Before I could stop him, he took off running toward the main chamber, his footsteps echoing off the walls. The scratching sounds followed him, and the cold. I ran the other way, toward the vents, trying not to think about what was about to happen to my friend. Trying not to think about the hunger, or how my skin was starting to look like fresh snow. Behind me, Marcus screamed. The sound turned into something else, something like breaking ice, and I ran faster, knowing the frozen watcher would follow. Knowing my friend's sacrifice couldn't be for nothing. I just hoped there was enough of me left to finish this. Heat hit me like a wall. After so much cold, the warm air from the volcanic vents felt like it was burning my skin. Steam filled the huge cave chamber, making it hard to see. My skin was almost translucent now, and the hunger felt like fire. In my stomach, that's when I heard it enter the chamber. The frozen watcher was nothing like the glimpses I'd caught before. It was huge, twice as tall as me with limbs like bare tree branches. Its skin looked like cracked ice, and its eyes were empty and white, like frozen lakes. Behind it, dragged by tendrils of ice, was what remained of Marcus. Another perfect ice sculpture. "I'm sorry," I whispered to my friend. Then I shouted at the creature, "You want me? Come get me!" It moved faster than anything that big should move. The steam froze around it, crystals hanging in the air. Every step it took left frozen footprints that spread like spider webs. I ran deeper into the steam, closer to the vents. The heat was making the thing slower, I could tell, but it was affecting me too. Parts of my skin were starting to melt like frost in morning sun. The hunger was unbearable now. I could feel what the creature wanted for me to give in, to eat, to become like it. To help it hunt, to freeze everything. It reached for me with hands like icicles. I dodged, but not fast enough. Its fingers brushed my arm, and I screamed as ice started spreading from the spot. But I was close enough now, right next to the biggest. "You want to know the thing about ice?" I gasped, fighting against the spreading frost. It melts. I grabbed the creature's arm and threw myself backward, pulling us both toward the vent. Burning hot steam hit us like a truck. "Dat krisen soir," Watcher screamed, a sound like a glacier breaking apart. Its icy skin began to crack and melt. It tried to pull away, but I held on tight, even as the ice spread up my arms. The heat was melting the ice almost as fast as it formed. Almost. "This is for Marcus," I said through chattering teeth. "For Sarah. For everyone you killed." The creature thrashed and fought, but I didn't let go. Couldn't let go. Steam filled my lungs, hot and sharp. The ice was up to my neck now, but the creature was melting faster than I was freezing. With a sound like thunder, the frozen Watcher's body began to break apart. Chunks of ice fell away, melting instantly in the hot steam. Its grip on me weakened, and then it shattered. The force threw me back against the cave wall. Pieces of the creature rained down around me, melting into nothing before they hit the ground. The ice on my skin stopped spreading, but it didn't melt away completely. I looked at my hands in the dim light. They were still pale as snow, and the hunger was still there, quieter but there. The frozen Watcher was gone, but it had left its mark on me. And somehow I knew it wasn't really dead, just sleeping, waiting for another 30. Years of cold and darkness. I touched the ice-white skin on my arm and knew I'd be waiting too, watching, making sure it never hurt anyone again. I've seen a lot of strange things in my 20 years of tracking dangerous predators, first with the FBI, and now as a park ranger, but nothing prepared me for what I discovered in the Adirondack Mountains last winter. It started with the deer. They weren't moving like normal deer should. One morning I watched from my cabin as 30 of them walked in perfect lines, like soldiers in formation. They were making shapes, circles, squares, triangles, in the morning mist. My dog Rex whined. At the window, his ears perked up in a way I'd never seen before. I told myself I was seeing things. After my breakdown at the FBI last year, I moved here to get away from the chaos, to find peace in the quiet of the mountains. But the mountains weren't quiet anymore. The snow came next. At first, I thought it was just the wind creating strange patterns in the fresh powder. But these weren't random. I found perfect spirals stretched across entire clearings, geometric shapes that looked like they were drawn with a giant compass. No footprints around them, no signs of human activity, just these massive designs appearing overnight, like crop, circles made of snow. Then the dreams started. I dreamed I was running through the forest on 4 legs, seeing through the eyes of a wolf. I could smell things I'd never smelled before, hear heartbeats of tiny creatures burrowing under the snow. When I woke up, my sheets were soaked with sweat, and Rex was staring at me with those intelligent brown eyes, like he knew exactly what I'd dreamed. But the really scary part? The local kids started sleepwalking into the forest. It began with little Tommy Peterson, age 8. His parents found him 3 miles from home at 2 a.m., standing in his pajamas in the middle of one of those snow patterns. He wasn't even shivering. When they asked him why he went there, he just said, "They were calling me." Within a week, 5 more children did the same thing, always at night, always walking toward the same part of the forest, always saying they heard them calling. The animals changed too. I watched a group of ravens working together to open a locked dumpster behind the ranger station. They were taking turns, each one trying different techniques until they figured, "Get out." Bears started leaving perfect circles of stones around their dens. Squirrels lined up acorns in arrow patterns, all pointing deeper into the mountains. One evening, while tracking these patterns, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. Hidden in a grove of ancient hemlocks, I found stone formations that looked older than the mountains themselves. They were arranged in a spiral pattern that matched the snow designs perfectly, and carved into the center stone was a handprint, way too big to be human. As I stood there studying those stones, the forest went completely silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. Just this heavy feeling like something was watching me, something old, something smart. That's when Rex, my trusted K9 partner for the last 5 years, turned to me and did something impossible. He looked me straight, in the eyes and in my head, clear as day, I heard him say, "They're coming, I'm not crazy, I know what I heard." And I know what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about reality. But to understand that, you need to know what I discovered about the true history of these mountains and the secret government facility hidden deep within them. This is my story, and I swear every word of it is true. After Rex spoke in my mind that day, things started changing inside me too. It began with small things, knowing exactly where animals were hiding without seeing them, feeling the mood of the forest like it was my own. At first I thought I was losing it again, like during my breakdown. But this felt different, clearer, more real. One morning I woke up knowing exactly where a lost hiker was, even though no one had reported anyone missing yet. I found her right where I'd seen her in my mind, trapped in a ravine with a broken ankle. When they asked how I knew where to look, I just said it was good tracking skills. How could I tell them the trees had whispered her location to me? That's when I started digging into the area's history. The local library had old newspapers going back 50 years, and what I found gave me chills. Every decade there were reports of strange animal behavior, kids sleepwalking, weird lights in the forest. But the really interesting stuff was in a folder marked classified that I found hidden behind some old tax records. In 1973, the government set up a secret research station deep in these mountains. They called it Project Echo. The papers didn't say what they were studying, but there were photos of men in white coats taking measurements around those same stone formations I'd found. Rex changed too. He stopped barking altogether. Instead, we talked in our heads. He told me things about the forest that no dog should know, about hidden caves miles away, about the strange lights that danced through the trees at night, about the tall ones who watched us from the shadows. "They're like us," Rex explained one night as we sat by the fireplace. "But they're also like the trees, the wolves, the birds. They're everything at once." I knew I should have been scared, should have reported all this to someone. But something was pulling me deeper into the mystery. I started following the animal patterns, letting them guide me through the mountains. That's how I found the hidden valley. It was a place that shouldn't exist, a deep bowl of land that didn't show up on any map. The temperature there was 20 degrees warmer than anywhere else. Plants I'd never seen before grew everywhere, glowing softly in the shadows. Animals that should have been enemies moved together in groups. Wolves walking with deer, hawks perching next to rabbits. In a cave at the far end of the valley, I found the paintings. They covered the walls from floor to ceiling, images of tall, furry figures with eyes that seemed to glow. The paintings showed them teaching early humans to make fire, to find healing plants, to talk to animals. But the newest images, the ones that looked just a few years old, showed something else. The figures touching people's heads, sharing something that looked like light. That's when I felt them watching me. Not just with eyes, but with minds. Dozens, minds, all linked together like a giant web of thoughts. And somehow I was starting to feel myself being pulled into that web. Rex pressed against my leg. "Don't fight it," he said in my head. "They've been waiting for someone like you. Someone who can bridge both worlds." The air grew thick with energy. My head buzzed like it was full of electricity. In the deepest part of the cave, something moved in the darkness. Something big. And then they showed me everything. But what they revealed about our world, about human history, about what we really are, that's the part that changed me forever. That's the part that made me question whether I should ever leave these mountains again. They didn't look like the Bigfoot you see in blurry photos or cheap tourist shops. They were tall, yes, and covered in fur that shifted colors like autumn leaves. But their eyes held entire worlds in them. "We've always been here," they told me, not with words, but with thoughts and memories that flooded my mind, like a warm river. "We've watched your kind grow, we've helped when we could, we've hidden when we had to." They showed me their memories. I saw woolly mammoths walking through these valleys. I saw their kind teaching early humans how to make medicines from plants. I saw them slowly retreating deeper into the forests as cities grew and spread. But helicopters were getting closer. Through the eyes of a hawk, I could see soldiers moving through the forest below, their guns loaded with tranquilizer darts. They had heat sensors, tracking equipment, everything they needed to find this hidden valley. Something was wrong. Time felt strange in their valley. Sometimes the sun would move across the sky in minutes. Other times, it seemed to freeze in place for hours. The divide is thinning, they explained. The walls between your world and ours are breaking down. That's when I heard the helicopters. The military had been watching. All those years of Project Echo weren't about studying the forest. They were studying them. Now they wanted to capture one, to study it, to learn its secrets. I felt the colony's fear ripple through my mind like a cold wind. But there was something else too, an offer. They could teach me to be like them, to join their collective mind permanently, to become something more than human. Your mind is already splitting, one of them told me. I could feel it. Parts of me spread out across the forest, living in the eyes of eagles, running with wolves, growing slowly with ancient trees. I wasn't just Chris Walker anymore. I was becoming something else. Rex whined and pressed his head against my hand. Choose carefully, he said. Once you cross this line, you can't go back. The colony began to hum, not with their voices, but with their minds. The sound vibrated through the earth, through the trees, through every living thing around us. The forest itself was waking up, becoming aware in a way I'd never felt before. Time stretched like taffy. I watched a raindrop take an hour to fall from a leaf. I saw a flower grow from seed to bloom in seconds. The whole universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my choice. I could feel the soldiers getting closer, feel their determination, their orders to capture one of these beings at any cost. Feel their fear of what they didn't understand. The colony reached out to me one last time. They could merge my consciousness with theirs, make me part of something bigger than anything I'd ever known. Or I could stay human, try to protect them from the outside world. But as I stood there, caught between two worlds, I realized something that changed everything, something that made both choices seem too simple. I finally understood what the geometric patterns meant, why the children were sleepwalking, what was really happening in these mountains, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The patterns in the snow, the geometric shapes, the way animals moved in formation. It wasn't just communication, it was preparation. The colony wasn't trying to hide anymore. They were getting ready to reveal themselves to the world, but they needed someone who could help humans understand them. That's why they chose me. I stepped forward, placed my hand on the ancient stone, and let my mind open completely. But instead of joining their collective consciousness, I did something different. I became a bridge. Through me, the soldiers approaching the valley suddenly felt what I felt. They experienced the colony's memories, their wisdom, their deep connection to the forest. Their guns lowered as wonder replaced fear. The military commanders watching through camera feeds saw it too. They felt ancient memories flow through their minds, woolly mammoths thundering across Ice Age plains, their own ancestors learning to survive with help from these beings, centuries of quiet guardianship over the forests. The colony had never wanted to stay hidden forever. They'd been waiting for the right moment, the right person to help them reconnect with humanity. Not as creatures to be studied or feared, but as teachers and guardians who had been here all along. That was 3 months ago. Now the Hidden Valley isn't so hidden anymore. Scientists work alongside the colony, learning their ways of healing. The forest. Children visit to learn how to speak with animals. The military base has become a research center for understanding the colony's abilities. Not to use them as weapons, but to help restore balance to damaged ecosystems around the world. As for me, parts of my consciousness still drift through the forest. Sometimes I see through eagle eyes or run with the wolf packs. Rex and I spend our days helping others learn to open their minds to the forest's songs. But I'm still human, still Chris Walker, just more. The other day I watched a group of kids sitting in a circle with one of the colony members learning to make flowers bloom by speaking to them with their minds. Their parents stood nearby, amazed but no longer. Afraid. They're ready now, Rex said, sitting beside me. They understand. I nodded, feeling the ancient wisdom of the trees mixing with the bright curiosity of the children. The geometric patterns still appear in the snow sometimes, but now they're not just messages, they're invitations. Invitations to learn, to grow, to remember that humans were never meant to be separate from the natural world. The colony was right about one thing. The walls between worlds are getting thinner. But maybe that's not something to fear. Maybe it's just nature's way of helping us remember what we've always been. Part of something bigger, something older, something wiser than ourselves. Last night I dreamed I was standing on the mountain top, seeing through 1,000 eyes at once. Eagles soaring overhead, deer moving through valleys, children dreaming in their beds, ancient beings watching over it all. And for the first time since this all began, I wasn't afraid of what I'd become. Because sometimes the strangest truth is the simplest one. We're all connected. We always have been. We just needed someone to help us remember. And that, more than anything else, is why they chose me. I never should have ignored the signs. Maybe if I had paid attention sooner, my partner would still be human. Maybe I wouldn't wake up some mornings wondering if my reflection is really me. But when you've spent 20 years as a park ranger at Yellowstone, you start thinking you've seen it all. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. My name is Daniel Foster, and I used to be just another park ranger. Before that, I was an anthropologist studying Native American cultures, before the drinking nearly ruined my career. Now, at 47, I thought, I had my life figured out. 7 years sober. A good job protecting the wilderness I love. And enough knowledge about local tribes to give pretty interesting tours to visitors. But everything changed the day I found those artifacts. It was a cloudy Tuesday morning in late October when I first spotted them. I was doing my regular patrol near the less visited areas of the park when something caught my eye. A circle of ancient arrowheads arranged in a perfect spiral. Now, finding Native American artifacts isn't unusual in Yellowstone, but finding them arranged like this? That's not normal. Not normal at all. I remember kneeling down to take a closer look, my knees cracking. Yeah, getting old isn't fun. The arrowheads weren't just placed randomly. They formed a pattern I recognized from my anthropology days. It was a symbol meaning gateway in several tribal languages. But here's the weird part. When I tried to take a photo, my phone died. Brand new phone, full battery, just dead. That should have been my first warning. Over the next few weeks, things got stranger. The elk started disappearing first. Not just moving to different areas, completely vanishing. Then the wolves, then the bears. Rangers would radio in about empty territories that should have been teeming with wildlife. The tourists started noticing. Two complaining about not seeing any animals on their visits. But what really got to me were the petroglyphs. There's this ancient rock wall near the northern boundary that I've studied hundreds of times. I know every carving by heart. So when I found them changed one morning, my blood ran cold. Someone, or something, had scratched out all the eyes in the ancient drawings. Just the eyes. The rest was untouched. That's when the other rangers started reporting. Well, impossible things. Mike, my closest friend on the force, radioed in one evening, his voice shaking. "Dan," he said, "I just saw myself walking through the trees. But I'm sitting in my truck." I laughed it off at first. Told him he was probably tired seeing things in the shadows. But then Jenny reported the same thing. Then Carlos. Then I saw it too. A perfect copy of myself standing among the trees watching me with eyes that didn't look quite right. But the worst was what we found in the Valley of Silence, as the local tribes call it. A group of deer still alive, but wrong. Their insides were on the outside, hearts beating in the open air, but they were grazing like nothing was wrong. When we approached, they looked at us with two human eyes and spoke. Yes, spoke, in voices that sounded like rustling leaves and cracking bones. I've been sober for 7 years, but that night, for the first time since I quit, I wanted a drink. Bad. Instead, I called the tribal elders. If anyone knew what was happening, it would be them. The old medicine man, Joseph Running Bear, agreed to meet me. As the full moon rose that night, casting strange, multicolored lights through clouds that shouldn't have been there, he told me, something that made my skin crawl. The seal is weakening, he said, his ancient eyes filled with fear. They are coming back, the ones who walk in other skins, and they're hungry after all these years. I asked him what he meant, but he just gripped my arm with surprising strength and said, "Whatever you do, don't look them in the eyes. Once they catch your gaze, the change begins." I drove home that night, hands shaking on the steering wheel, watching the strange lights dance across the sky. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of something running behind my truck. Something that looked like a man, but moved like a wolf, its skin rippling like water. The warning signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. Now it might be too late for all of us, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it all went wrong, how the curse spread, how I watched my best friend become something else, and how I learned that reality itself is so much stranger and more terrifying than any of us ever imagined. It started with Mike. Looking back, I should have noticed something was wrong with my partner sooner. We'd been friends for 12 years, shared hundreds of patrols together. But that morning, he was different. "You okay?" I asked him as we checked the trail markers. He was scratching his arms non-stop like something was crawling under his skin. "Fine," he said, but his voice came out rough like he had a sore throat. "Just haven't been sleeping well. Keep having these dreams." "What kind of dreams?" He stopped walking and turned to me. His eyes looked yellowish in the morning light. "I'm running through the woods on all fours, chasing something, hunting, and it feels good." A chill ran down my spine, remembering what Joseph Running Bear had said about not looking them in the eyes. Had Mike seen something out here? "Have you been seeing those copies of yourself again?" I asked carefully. He nodded slowly. "They're getting closer. Yesterday, one of them tried to touch me. Before I could respond, our radios crackled to life. A group of tourists had gone missing near Old Faithful. As we drove there, I noticed Mike's hands shaking on the wheel. His nails looked longer than usual, almost like claws. The tourist group we found wasn't missing anymore, but I almost wished they were. We discovered them sitting in a perfect circle in a clearing, all 8 of them. They were speaking in a language I'd never heard before. Even with my background in anthropology, it didn't sound human. Their eyes were yellow, just like Mike's. When we approached, they turned to us in perfect unison. One of them, a teenage girl in a red jacket, smiled at me. Her teeth were sharp. "The gateway opens," she said in English, but her voice echoed like she was speaking from the bottom of a deep well. "The old ones are hungry." Mike grabbed my arm, his hand was burning hot. "Dan," he whispered, "I can understand what they're saying. In that other language, I can understand them." That's when I noticed the moons, 3 of them, hanging in the morning sky like pale eyes watching us. But that's impossible. It was daytime. The sun was right there too, but somehow these moons were just as bright. I rubbed my eyes, hard. When I looked again, there was only one moon. The tourists were gone, 2 leaving behind a circle of flattened grass and 8 pairs of empty shoes. Mike threw up in the bushes. When he lifted his head, blood was dripping from his mouth. "What's happening to me, Dan?" I took him to see Joseph Running Bear that afternoon. The old man took one look at Mike and stepped back, making a sign against evil. "The seal is breaking, faster than we feared," he said. "The skinwalkers aren't just coming back, they're turning others, making a pack. How do we stop it?" I asked. My hand was on Mike's shoulder and I could feel him trembling. His skin felt like it was moving under my palm. "The old places are waking up," Joseph said. "The ritual sites where our ancestors fought. Them the first time. They're rebuilding themselves, look." He pointed to a pile of rocks nearby. As we watched, they began to move on their own, stacking themselves into what looked like an ancient altar. Symbols carved themselves into the stones, glowing with a faint blue light. Jesus, Mike whispered. Then he doubled over in pain. I helped him back to the truck, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, his reflection wasn't there, just an empty seat. That night, I broke my sobriety. 7 years down the drain, but after what I'd seen, I needed something to numb my mind. As I sat on my porch with a bottle of whiskey, I watched the forest behind my cabin. Shapes moved in. The darkness, human shapes that walked on all fours, animal shapes that stood on 2 legs. The moon kept changing positions in the sky, like someone was moving it around like a spotlight. Time felt wrong. I'd look at my phone and see it was 8 p.m., then look again a minute later and it would be 3 a.m. I dozed off eventually and dreamed of running through the woods. In the dream, I could smell everything. The decay of fallen leaves, the musk of deer, the sharp tang of human fear. When I passed a stream, I caught my reflection in the water. I had Mike's face. I woke up to pounding on my door. It was Jenny, another ranger, her eyes wide with panic. "You need to see this," she said. "The sacred sites, all of them, they're changing." I followed her to Spirit Rock, one of the oldest known Native American sites in the park. The ground around it was moving, rising and falling like it was breathing. Ancient totems burst from the earth like growing trees, but they grew in seconds instead of centuries. And there, standing among the totems, was Mike. At least it looked like Mike from the neck down. But his face was melting, shifting, becoming something else. "Help me," he said in a voice that wasn't quite human anymore. "I can feel them inside me, Dan. The old ones. They're so hungry." That's when the sky split open like a cracked egg, and things began pouring through. Things I can't describe, things that hurt your eyes to look at. And behind them came the skinwalkers, running on all fours, their shapes flickering between human and animal, and something else entirely. The park wasn't just our home anymore. It had become a doorway, and we were running out of time to close it. I didn't want to believe what was happening to Mike, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. My best friend was changing into something else, something ancient and hungry. And he wasn't the only one. That night, while the sky kept cracking open like broken glass, I discovered the truth. I found an old military bunker hidden deep in the park, its door hanging open. Inside, dusty files told a story the government had tried to hide. The skinwalkers weren't just a legend. They were an infection passed from person to person through eye contact. The government had known about them since the 1950s. They'd been watching, waiting, trying to contain what they called the entity, but they'd failed. As I read through the files, my hands started shaking. Not from fear, from change. My fingernails were getting longer, darker. I could smell everything in that bunker. Old paper, rusty metal, and somewhere nearby, blood. I was changing too. My phone rang. Jenny. Her voice was trembling. "Dan, you need to see this. The old battlefield. The one where the tribes fought hundreds of years ago, it's happening again." I drove there as fast as I could. The road kept shifting under my truck, sometimes turning to dirt, sometimes to ancient stone paths. Time wasn't working right anymore. I saw the same deer cross my path 3 times, but each time it had more human features. When I reached the battlefield, I stopped breathing for a moment. The past was playing out right in front of me like a movie, but it was real. Native warriors fought against creatures that kept changing shape. The battle would fade away, then start again, like someone hitting rewind. And through the cracks in the sky I saw them. The things the skinwalkers served, the old ones, they were huge, impossible shapes that hurt to look at, like someone had taken every nightmare ever dreamed and mixed them together. Mike was there too, but he wasn't Mike anymore. His body kept shifting, now a wolf, now a bear, now something I can't describe. But his eyes were still his, own filled with fear and pain. "They're coming through," he said in a voice that echoed strangely. "The gateway, it's almost open. Dan, you have to stop it." "How?" I asked, but even as I said it, I knew. Deep in my changing bones, I knew. Joseph Running Bear appeared beside me, looking older than ever. "There is a way," he said. "An ancient ritual. But the price?" "Tell me." He explained it as the battle scenes kept playing around us. The ritual would close the gateway, but it needed someone caught between human and skinwalker. Someone who was changing but hadn't changed completely. Someone to become a guardian. That someone would have to be me. I looked at my hands. Claws were pushing through my fingertips. I could feel the hunger growing inside me, the urge to hunt, to change. But I could also feel something else. The part of me that had fought addiction for 7 years. The part that knew how to stay human, even when everything inside you screams to let go. "The eclipse is coming," Joseph said. "When the moon covers the sun, that's when the gateway will open fully. That's when you'll have to choose." "What happens to Mike?" I asked. "What happens to everyone who's changed? If you succeed, they'll be trapped between worlds. Not fully human anymore, but not lost to the hunger either. Like you will be." I looked at my friend, at what he'd become, and saw him nod. He understood. Maybe he'd known all along this was how it had to end. The sky was getting darker. The eclipse was starting. The old ones were pushing harder against the barrier between worlds, their massive shapes making the air itself bend and twist. All around us, skinwalkers gathered, their forms flickering between human and animal in nightmare. I had a choice to make. I could run, try to stay human, watch as our world was torn apart by ancient horrors. Or I could give up my humanity too, save everyone I cared about. Some choices aren't really choices at all. As the moon began to cover the sun, I started walking toward the center of the battlefield. Every step was harder than the last. The change was racing through my body now, trying to take over completely. But I held on to who I was. 7 years sober. Park ranger. Protector. The ritual had to be completed before the eclipse ended, or everything would be lost. And somewhere deep in the growing darkness, I heard the old ones laughing. The eclipse was almost complete. I stood in the middle of the ancient stone circle, my body shaking as I fought against the change. The ritual had to be done perfectly. One mistake and everything would be lost. Joseph Running Bear's voice carried over the wind, teaching me the words I needed to say. They weren't in any language I knew, but somehow I understood them. They spoke of boundaries, of doors, of the space between worlds. All around us, the skinwalkers watched. Some looked like wolves with human eyes, others like people wearing animal skins that kept moving. Mike stood closest to me, his form shifting between shapes, but his eyes were still his own. "It's time," Joseph said as the moon covered the last bit of sun. I raised my hands to the dark sky. The words came out of my mouth like smoke, ancient and powerful. Each one hurt to say, like they were burning my throat. But I kept going. The ground cracked under my feet. Light poured out. Not normal light, but something older. The kind of light that existed before the sun. It wrapped around me like ropes, pulling me down and up at the same time. That's when the pain really started. My bones cracked and reformed. My skin felt like it was being torn off and put back on wrong. I screamed, but the sound wasn't human anymore. The hunger inside me grew until it felt like it would eat me alive, but I held on. I thought about the park I'd protected for 20 years, about Mike and the other rangers, about all the people who would die if I failed. I thought about my 7 years of sobriety, about fighting against the thing inside you that wants to take control. Through the cracks in the sky, the old ones reached for me with impossible limbs. Their touch felt like ice and fire. They tried to pull me through, to make me one of them. Their voices filled my head with promises of power, of freedom from human limits. "No," I said, though my mouth wasn't really a mouth anymore. "This is my home, you can't have it." The ritual words reached their peak. The light from the ground shot up into the sky like a tornado made of lightning. I felt something tear, not in the air, but in reality itself. The gateway was opening. But this time it wasn't opening to let things out. It was opening to pull them back in. The old ones screamed as they were dragged back through the cracks in the sky. The skinwalkers howled, their shapes blurring faster and faster. Mike looked at me one last time, nodded, and let himself be pulled away. I almost went with them. The pull was so strong, and part of me wanted to go. The part that wasn't human anymore, that would never be human again. But I planted my feet, my paws, my feet, and held my ground. The eclipse ended. The gateway closed. The sky healed itself like a wound scabbing over. And I remained. Not human. Not skinwalker. Something in between. A guardian of the boundary. Between worlds, that was 3 months ago. I still work as a park ranger, though I had to learn to control my new shape. Sometimes I look human, sometimes I don't. The other rangers know what happened, but they don't talk about it. They just nod when they see me on the trails. Mike and the others who changed, they're still here too in a way. Sometimes I see them. In the woods, running between the trees. Not fully human anymore, but not lost to the hunger either. They help me watch the boundaries, make sure nothing slips through. The tourists never notice anything strange. They take their photos, hike their trails, and go home with normal memories. But sometimes, if they look carefully, they might see a ranger whose shadow doesn't quite match his shape. Or hear wolves howling words in ancient languages. I find things in my pockets now. Arrowheads, old coins, pieces of pottery. I don't remember picking them up. They just appear, like gifts from the space between worlds. Each one is warm to the touch and hums with old magic. The hunger is still there, but I've had practice fighting hungers before. 7 years sober taught me how to live with wanting something you can't have. Now it's just a different kind of thirst. Joseph Running Bear visits sometimes. He says I did the right thing, that the world is safer now. I think he's right. The old ones are locked away, the gateway is closed, and I am the lock. Every full moon I patrol the ancient sites, making sure the seals hold. My footprints change as I walk. Human, wolf, bear, things I can't name. But my mind stays my own. That's the deal I made, the price I paid. Some nights, when the moon is bright and the air smells of pine needles and old magic, I run with Mike and the others through the dark woods. We guard what we once protected in a different way. And if you're ever in Yellowstone at night and you see strange shapes moving through the trees or multiple moons in the sky, don't be afraid. We're watching. Over you, just don't look us in the eyes.